hello, welcome, welcome. Did that fix the audio? Did it make that stupid, really loud, like glitching noise at the beginning, or was that one better? Let me know. Let's find out. I think that fixed it. Good to know. Okay, welcome in everybody. Let me get this posted in the Discord really quick for those who might not have other ways to know that I'm live. All right, there we go. There we go. Okay. Give people a minute to get in here. Get some water. My voice is still a little bit shot from Saturday. Reading through all the submissions out loud was quite the task. I feel like I talk a lot during the day, but for some reason streams really fry my voice. So, okay, let me pull up my to-do list, because I have some that I want to get done today. Let me put them up here. So we want welcome in Char. Project priorities, we want like need to know section. We want whoops. Ah. Okay, and is that it? Oh yeah. Okay. Oh nice, I love that that definitely doesn't fit. Is there not like a way to change the font size on this? Guess not. Well, we're making this small. Hopefully you guys can see this. Welcome in, Joe. Didn't get to watch last stream. Like, sounds like got some good submissions. Yeah, they were really good. Everyone who participated did super good. I think the VOD is up if you want to watch through it all. There's some really cool stuff. If not, I'll be posting everybody's submissions for everybody to read, just for some inspiration and stuff in general. But yeah. Okay. So yeah, really what I want to get done today is just get more of this ready. Because I think if the entire website doesn't work, because it sounds like allowing you guys to post on the website is its own debacle. I don't know if I am quite ready for that yet, but I think it'd be good to at least have a place where you guys can reference things and information and get some announcements and stuff. Like, I mean, the announcements and realm events will probably be very similar to the stuff in the Discord currently. I imagine a lot of the big announcements will also go in the Discord, but for the realm events, I don't know exactly what the last realm event announcement looked like. Honestly, it wasn't a great. I don't think I did a great job. That was some of the feedback I got was like, I don't really know when the Realm event really started and ended, and it's kind of hard for some people to know like what the timing was like. So I think I'd probably post and say, here's the little excerpt, go to the website and you'd be taken to this page, and then you'd be able to see like, okay, here's the details of when it starts, when it ends, um, all the information needed, here's where to submit. All of that would be here. The other announcements I think could just be duplicates of the ones in the Discord for people who like checking the website versus people like just Discord announcements. Whichever works. I don't really have a huge preference currently. Um, yeah. Let's see. Wouldn't recommend it except for a select few, as it is an extremely slippery slope. What do you mean by that, Char? Like, are you saying for community submissions? Because my idea was the website would kind of serve as the like the community hub for Spirehelm, where the Discord would be more for discussions and community and, you know, talking really about Spirehelm. And I've looked at some other projects, and nobody really is doing exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it. But like I'm a big part of MCDM right now with Draw Steel. No, I'm not paid, but this game as an alternate to Dungeons and Dragons is super cool, and I'm really excited to play it. But they have their own subreddit, they have their own Discord server, and they have their own website for stuff. And I don't want to just have a bajillion places for people. I want it to be more consolidated. He also has a YouTube channel. And I think I'm just trying to think of where the best way to go forward is, because we have a lot of people in here in the Discord, but active people, we have probably, I would say, less than 30 or so that are here weekly, and probably less than 10 that are checking in on the daily. Maybe not less than 10, probably like less than 15. So we're still fairly small, and if things get bigger, which I hope they do, I think that'd be really fun. The bigger it gets, I think the more things can expand. Obviously, some things would get more difficult with growth, and some things will get easier with more growth. But yeah, I think I want the website to be for something, not just another thing to have. And I think the most important thing for the website to be is a resource of information where people can go and say, okay, this is officially what we know. And then you can go to the Discord and say, hey, I was reading this part about the Ignis specs, and I had this question about this. And somebody in the Discord can go, oh yeah, I can help you out on that, and whatever. I don't think the website would be the best place to have all of those discussions, although there are comments built in here, so I could say, oh man, I really liked your submission, blah, 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 blah. And then you could respond and say, oh yeah, I got this inspiration from blank, 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 and I think it'd be cool to dive into that more. And so there could be some amount of conversation on here, but it would be visible for everyone in the future to see. They could see all the comments like a Reddit thread. Whereas Discord, any conversation that happens in Discord gets lost within minutes. So it's impossible to archive and keep track of things. Shouldn't allow much of us to control it. Just discuss the changes with us and implement them yourself. Yeah, I think for now it'd probably be fairly small. I think once it launches, I may try to get, you know, 1 to 5 of the Arch Chroniclers, give them permission on the website to edit things in case, you know, if I'm out of town or in school or something, and you know, something needs to be updated or whatever, you know, some mod capabilities there. It doesn't seem like that's too hard to do. But I think right now it's manageable enough that I think I can build the majority of it. And I've been building it from the ground up, so I know how everything works currently. But yeah, I think it'd be cool for people new to the project to also come here and see, okay, here's the archive of records, here's what the collectors of the archive are bringing in, and the cool stuff that you guys come up with. Obviously, the Realm event stuff will end up in the compendium. So it'll be like, okay, here's the Valenholds, here's the Bay, and it says, okay, the Bay is called Burl Deep. These have ideas from Joe the Chronicler, Ollie, and Mir, and blank, 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 blank. Here's all the information. You have like sub-chapters, maybe even sub-pages eventually, stuff like that. And then at the same time, it'd be cool for people to be able to read cool stuff that's just not necessarily quote unquote canonized, or even if it is, it's here in the archive of records of like, hey, you guys can post. And I know WordPress, which is the website builder that I'm using, since most website builders are just not good enough for for the type of website I'm trying to build. WordPress is more open source, so it allows you to do more, but it's a little bit more janky, which is fine because I actually like this old school feel of not having super polished websites. Anyways, there is a way to have, like, for your first ever contribution to the website, you have to be approved. So like the mods would look at it and they'd say, okay, is this a joke? Are they trying to scam us? Is this like just bloat? Or is this legit? And once you get approved, then you have the ability to keep posting as you want. And maybe, or we could just keep it to where every single submission has to be mod approved. And as the project grows, maybe it could open up and be a little bit easier. Right now, I don't think we'd get a ton of people trying to submit every single day. It wouldn't be like hundreds like we had back in October of like people were just throwing ideas out all day long and it was like impossible to keep track of anything. I don't think that would happen. But I think it would be cool to have a place where we can see like, oh, here's some cool stuff. Like here's the Lurkers of the Death Storm Barrows. Here's, you know, all the stuff. You can read through it and you can like it. You can comment, and then ideally trying to figure out a way to do a kind of like an upvote system where you'd have like the newest records here. You guys can't see my cursor. Newest records here, and the most liked records of the last month or so would pop up here. And or you could browse categories. You could go creatures, and then I need to set up this page, and it would tell you all the ones that have creatures involved, magic, locations, nights, whatever, and then tags like a story or a journal or a legend or a myth, that kind of thing. So, welcome back, Ollie. Okay. Please don't vote on the polls for community to decide. It looks like biases. I was thinking about not voting, but I also think there are some. I was thinking of not voting, but I also think that there are some that will be better suited for the next project than others. And if the whole community votes, you know, my vote is like a 1%. Obviously, most of the votes are getting, or polls are getting like 20, so my vote has a little bit more sway, but I think it's fair for me to be a part of the votes sometimes. Maybe not every single time, but for something like this, I think it's fair. Yeah, draw steal is pretty cool. It's a very it's very tactic focused. So if the funnel of TTRPGs starts with D&D, if you're looking for more of a narrative focused game, characters first, story first, a lot of character influence of like, we won't let anything bad happen unless you as a player want it. Daggerheart kind of leans that way, which I also have, which has been great. I've been playing more Daggerheart than anything else in the last couple years. Draw Steal switches it a little bit. It complicates combat a bit more, but also slims it down in some ways so that it's balanced. You don't miss any hits. It's just weak hits, medium hits, and strong hits. And then it gives you a ton of abilities to use in and some out of combat. But the combat is very much synergy and deciding who goes when and where you push things and positioning and advantages in combat and stuff like that. So it's definitely more tactical focused, but they try to speed up combat so that 3 rounds is considered a long combat versus D&D where you might have 6-round combats that slog on for a long time. And really the one I'm excited to try it with, I've been running for my extended family a Elden Ring campaign since I've played the game of Elden Ring and they have no interest in playing the actual video game. So I've been kind of running them as characters through the story of Elden Ring. And we tried it with Draw Steal, and I had to homebrew a ton of stuff for it, which was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. It was a blast, and it's what I love doing. I love designing games. It's like my passion. But Daggerheart got to a point where once combat got complicated enough, it just felt slow, and it felt like things weren't hitting as hard as they should have. And so I think Draw Steal solves the problems for the fantasy of Elden Ring. Like we've talked about the fantasy in our project a lot as well. The capturing the fantasy of what it means to play Elden Ring in a TTRPG is impossible, but you can get closer with certain systems that are essentially tools to get you to a destination. And Draw Steal, I think, the combat in Draw Steal is much more, it's a much more adept tool for that type of fantasy of Elden Ring. Gritty combat, choices matter. If you dodge at the wrong time and you waste your attack, it's over. Versus Draw Steal, or Daggerheart, excuse me, which is much more flowy, theater of the mind, and that sort of thing, which was really fun at the beginning. But later on, it was like, okay, we're in a boss fight, and I can't just like theater of the mind, even with minis, only takes you so far. So I'm excited to try Draw Steel with the DLC, which will be like the next campaign that we'll be running with that, and that'll be years down the line. But let's see. Welcome back, Ollie. Account making a regulation on the website. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't really know if I want to do. From what I've heard, WordPress does have some plugins for like you have to create an account with an email or something, so you can't just spam accounts all the time. They have like automatic bot behavior stuff, and with moderation on who can post, you can have like a bot or an unsigned in account come and like your post, but it wouldn't be able to make their own or comment unless they're like a registered account. So I don't think it'd be a huge problem, but I don't know if it's something I want to jump into quite yet. I want to have the system kind of built for it so that if we ever decide to, or when we're ready to, we can open it up. But I think that may be a post compendium sort of addition to the website instead of right now, where I think it's probably best served as just a compendium, some announcements, some other resources, and whatnot. Which system will work best for Spirehelm? That's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about that because I always think I am like I'm going to school for entertainment design in visual art mostly. Is like what most of my classes are about. But my real passion is technically in like game design. Like I just love every aspect of game design. I could do it all day and never get bored. And luckily art is very close to that. It's design. Concept art is a design thing. This website, this project as a whole is fun because it's design and I'm getting to figure out what works and what doesn't. That's really my passion in life. But I always think, okay, if Spirehelm were to become a TTRPG, what would it look like? Because the fun of fantasy is getting to do things you don't get to do or experiencing things you don't get to experience. And you either read that and you're a passive consumer or you're an active consumer in a TTRPG or a video game. I think the closest one currently that I've seen is Mythic Bastionlands, which I've talked about a bit. It's this ridiculously cool, very Arthurian Knights-esque medieval fantasy game. It's a bit gritty. Like there's like not too much to the game, which is fun because a lot of it is like theater of the mind, and like I've taken a lot of inspiration from it as well with the way that in Mythic Bastionlands, the way that they view the realm is very similar to how I think a lot of Spire folk would view the realm of Spirehelm or the kingdom of Spirehelm. We haven't come up with a name for the realm yet. But I think they view it as this like mythic changing thing, this unexplored enigma. And there are places of refuge, but they don't have like this omniscient authority over the realm. They are like participants and survivors in it. And so you play these knights who that are basically like knighted by a seer, which, you know, our knights aren't knighted by Ignispecs, but the Ignispecs is the closest thing to these seers that are like these different withered type of creatures and stuff. Very similar to the Ignispecs. They have like the rotted seer. They have like the seer of blood and these type of things. And the Ignispecs obviously is a spin on the traditional oracle and seer. So there are some similarities. But yeah, you're on the quest. I don't remember they have something that they say. I don't know where it is, but they have like for the king, for the kingdom, for the realm, whatever it is, protect. They have some like mantra that they hold to, which is really cool. Anyways, I think this is the closest thing. I think you would only need a very few number of adaptations of story and or characters and how they work to play this. And I think it'd be really cool if there was one where you got to play as collectors in this similar type of realm. So that's probably the closest TTRPG I've found to Spirehelm's lore so far. But I think you could also use D&D, Daggerheart, or Draw Steel with some minor altercations. And a lot of that comes down to what kind of game do you want to play? Do you want to play a game where you are a collector of the archive, like a collector scripturum, or a priest of some kind going out to cleanse darkness? Because you could probably play that in anything, but it's probably better suited for Daggerheart or D&D. If you want to play something like a knight, maybe it's either Mythic Bastionlands for some of the more like whimsical, like uncontrollable sort of things. Whereas if you want to play more of a Sanctiarch protector type of class and you're fighting beasts and Bale and all these different things, probably something like Draw Steel or D&D is my guess. Anyways, Warhammer Old World. Oh yeah, I haven't played Old World. Is that one good? You can set up Discord integration with WordPress, website that uses Discord SSO for the website. See, that would be awesome. Yeah, I know, Joe, you've mentioned you've done some website stuff, which is awesome. Or that you do website stuff is for a living. One of the two, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't play TTRPGs, so it's all going over my head. Honestly, you should give them a shot. They're really fun. You can use them as a great way to find inspiration and stuff. Yeah. Anywho, sorry, we can kind of get to the meat and potatoes of this stream. I mean, this is more of a chill stream. There's nothing really. If you miss out on the entire stream, you're probably not missing much other than some fun conversation and seeing what I'm doing. But love having you guys here. It's fun. And I love just rambling on about random stuff. So yeah, so this right now is mostly a working, this is the scaffolding. I just wanted to make sure every type of page works. Basically on the website, there's like these 5 main pages. And within them, this one is showing obviously the index of the Compendium of Knowledge, which we can rename. I'm not final on this. I haven't decided if this is best. This is probably better named something else, because I intend for the compendium to be the slimmed down PDF, the guidebook. This is the hand this to your friend. They read it in 20 minutes and they love the idea and they want to be a part of Spirehelm. That's what the compendium is for. So I think this will probably turn into the grand archive of information, the archive of knowledge. We can name it something cool, whatever. It probably won't stay as the compendium, but currently I just named it that for some reason. I don't remember. And then we've got these sections, the kingdom, beyond the walls, magic and mysticism, and then the forces of darkness, which this one's kind of meant to be like the crossed out Tudus Tenebris, Libris Electi, that sort of like the restricted section where you're not supposed to access kind of thing. I don't know if this will be the final form of it or if it'll, I don't know what it will look like later. I just thought it'd be fun to have that sort of thing. Within that, there are sub-sections. You've got like the city of Spirehelm, and within it, I can put an entire page of information here, formatted and everything, whatever. And then you can have sub-pages over here to the right. So you can have the Grand Archive. Same thing. This is a host page where it shows you the world's largest collection of books, tomes, artwork, whatever. It doesn't go into every single detail. If you want more, you go to the Archive Clergy. And within this one, this is now its just text page, and these are headers. So you have a header there. You can go to the artifacts, Custodians of Light, whatever. That's your page. Then, if you wanted to do the archive halls, you would have the archive halls page. One thing I need to figure out probably right now is how to hyperlink to other pages. That will be probably the most important thing. Although I don't know right now, we don't have a ton of interconnected information yet because we're just starting out. The Valen holds just happened, and I think that will be the first one where we'll really want to start hyperlinking some things and letting people find their own way around the archive by following threads of information. But yeah, that's really it there. This one, I don't know if I want this on the main page. My idea here was like we'd have realm events here. So you have like the current realm event that people can participate in. And then announcements here, which you'd have a duplicate of the main realm event, but you'd also have other stuff like, oh, hey, we updated the gods and pantheons. We updated something. Here's a highlight of somebody's submission, whatever. Here's an update to the website, or here's a new YouTube video that I just posted, whatever. And then over here in this third column, which doesn't exist yet, it'll either be a highlight for like the top records of the month that are user submitted, or until then, maybe it'll be like the most recent compendium page that was most recently updated. So you could see like, oh, they just updated the Grand Archive, they just updated like the Valen holds, They just updated these couple things. And that way, when you get to the website, this will be like the landing page. And obviously, I want it to look way cooler and all that stuff. You can kind of find your way around and be like, okay, well, what do I want? What am I here for? Am I here for a realm event? Do I want to vote? Like, there is a poll system in here. I don't know if I would hold the polls here or in the Discord. I don't know yet. I just wanted to make sure I could if I wanted to. And then if you wanted to check out some of the compendium of knowledge or whatever it is there. This page I want to be the, I'm new here, I'm kind of confused, because most people come from a single video, which is never going to be enough to cover everything about the project. And so I think this is going to be the, here's what it is, here's how you create. If you want to create stuff, this is how you do it. This is just so far the duplicate of the Discord reference page that we have in the server guide or whatever. So that'd be that. This would have all the information. This is basically the living wiki. This would be just the realm events. You'd have the past ones over here to the right. You'd have a current one here, and this would have like a page with formatting and pictures and images and stuff. This would be better. This is where I want to have the Valenhold doc that we had last time. Where was it? This one. I'd rather not have to do this for realm events, and I'd rather do this and have you guys be able to reference it here outside of that. And then there'd be a link in there to the submission form or anything else. And, oh, that's a good, I don't know, there might need to be a, because this one you can comment on. There would probably need to be a comment section on this page where you could comment on the current realm event. But this would get updated, so there might be a duplicate here. I don't know how it'll all work, trying to figure it out, but. Okay. Let me catch up on chat. Yeah, I love the chill streams. Let's get more of them. Yeah, I want to do some more chill streams that aren't super official. I haven't decided if I want to keep the YouTube more clean and have just the important stuff on the YouTube and stream on Twitch for other stuff that's more just hanging out, doing fun stuff. I want to mess around with the synth some. You guys can't see it. I want to mess around with the synth and do some music making, but it's not the most important thing right now. So yeah, I hope to do more like this. Could the Force of Darkness be a different color just to show the distinction? That could also work. Yeah, green and purple. Yeah, yellow and red. Yeah, it could be disjointing visually. Yeah, I've kind of had like these colors as like just a theme. I really want it to feel like there's the old Diablo 2 website. Like this is really like this is what I'm going for, obviously. Old internet, kind of a little bit janky looking, but fun and interactive and full of wonder and whimsy, Oh, of course. Ads, thank you. Love that. But yeah, it's cool stuff like this, where you get like a picture, a gallery, some information. I think stuff like that would be really cool, and you can kind of scroll through some pages, whatever. So this is kind of like the vibe I'm going for. So trying to keep the colors somewhat within a theme. I kind of landed on like analogous colors, like kind of right next to each other. So between red and orange and yellow. But I mean, I'm not opposed to some other stuff. I just think this is kind of, so far, this is kind of the default vibe of Spirehelm. The grand archive of our own? Right. Dark One, Aletheus fanfics, yeah. User-made subtags on our own submissions actually be a good idea. I think that's how it's defaulted. Oh, thanks, like the visual style. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't grow up on Diablo 2, sadly, but I love the vibes of it. So, which is, that's what we're about. We can LARP here. We can be opposers. Yeah, I think it defaults to you can create your own user tags, but it may not. You may have to only select some. But there's also the possibility that we could create like official tags, which would be like obviously the type of what it's about, creatures or magic, and then what type of submission it is. So this one's more of a story versus one that's more of a journal or a ledger whatever we decide the best categories are. And then we could also make a third category if we needed to, of like my own little tags of, for example, if there's a community thread of people around um like the Fae people like we had going on earlier on in the project, you could tag it with the Fae people, and people would know, oh, I can go find the other things that this group of people is working on and do that. So when the Death Storm rewrite is coming, maybe this stream, honestly. I'm not opposed to getting some of that. When you do get exposed to old fantasy games when you're a nerd nepo baby like me. Yeah. Also, I just got a Warhammer store in my town, I think, that just opened up. And I will have no more money pretty soon. I will spend all of it there. Just kidding. Probably not. I don't have people to play with enough to justify buying Warhammer. I've played some on Tabletop Simulator with my friends online, but they would never actually spend the money on Warhammer and stuff. So, anyways, yeah, I think we should try to get some important lore done today on stream, building this out as much as we possibly can. And it probably means I need to clean up some of this because as I was building it, I realized that I had to go back and figure some stuff out. Yeah. Anywho, you don't justify buying minis, you just buy them. Yeah, exactly. I got this guy here. I haven't painted like any of my minis ever. And yeah, I'm a Tau chud. I play Tau sometimes. Honestly, I play Tau because my math teacher was the one that got me into Warhammer, and he played Tau, and I loved the look of them, and I'm a Star Wars kid, and so Tau were just so cool. I like the sci-fi look of them. But now that I've learned more of the lore, I really like the Tyranids. I have a Magic the Gathering deck for the Tyranids, and boy, are they fun to play. They are just the most relentless swarm of consumption. It's so fun to play them. And then on the Imperium side, I love the AdMech, Adeptus Mechanicus. They seem really cool. So, I don't know. I love all the factions so far. It's really hard to narrow down like which Warhammer faction is actually the best or my favorite or whatever. I don't think there is any best. My favorite Space Marine chapter is the White Scars currently. I was on the Salamanders hype train as well when Space Marine 2 came out, but now I'm slowly moving away towards my own thinking for myself, and I really like the White Scars, like the Mongols basically. They're super cool. Yeah, I really can't wait until the Force of Darkness one, probably the Realm event I'm looking most forward to. Me too. I'm looking forward to that one. I think it'll be really fun. I hope, I think all of the ones that we've talked about that are in the votes right now are probably the next ones we will do. There might be something else that pops up and throws itself in there, but I imagine it'll be like one of those. And I also imagine that they will be shorter. I can't think of a reason that the peoples and races realm event would be as long as the Valenholds. Same with lords and rulers. I imagine that would be kind of small. Regions of the realm could be a bigger one, and evil forces and monsters could also be a bigger one, depending on how we decide to go about it. If we do like a design your own monster type versus design villains of the world, of the realm, design their keeps, their strongholds, their forces, their mini armies. It could be more expansive, or it could just be a bunch of really small stuff that wouldn't take so long. So, I don't know. If only my Warhammer group like 40k, I'd buy the whole shelf of Tyranids. Do you play Age of Sigmar, Ollie, or Kill Team? I've played 40k virtually on Tabletop Sim. I've never my math teacher got me into Kill Team because it was cheaper, and you don't need as many minis. So I have enough Tau, I think, to make a Kill Team. Maybe I have to use a couple proxies. But I've never played a full 40k game with actual minis because, gosh dang. Anyways. I personally imagine the Forces of the Dark One as the night creatures from Castlevania. It's been so long since I've seen Castlevania. I think that's close. Creatures, Castlevania. Because they're kind of just like this swarm of different types of enemies, right? You got skeletons, you got werewolves, you have dragons almost, gargoyles. You have a bunch of just different types of enemies that form in different ways. Yeah, I think that's probably the closest thing that it'll feel like. The Force of the Dark One has night creatures in Castlevania. Everyone else imagine them. Yeah, Nazgul. To be honest, yeah, I think the Nazgul is a very prominent theme. I don't know if ours will be. I mean, you need every good fantasy needs their good villains, and the Dark One, like we talked about last stream a little bit, is so vague and beyond the forces of the actual realm that I don't think he will appear. He'll be kind of like Sauron in a way, maybe even more like Morgoth. I don't know too much about Lord of the Rings lore, but I know Morgoth is like the Dark One before Sauron. But I think it'd be really cool to have either corrupted evil people or direct summons from the Dark One that appear in the land and have names that people know, that aren't redacted from all of history type of thing. A much more present evil, because in every good world building is only good. Every good project of world building is only good if there's an actual story to be had, if there's actual drama and tension. And without an actual present bad guy, if it's just, oh, there's this big bad scary guy that you're supposed to be scared of, nobody's actually going to care about him unless he's going to die or he's going to come back and attack everyone. Whereas when you get people like the Nazgul are scary to Frodo and to Aragorn and to anyone else, even though they're not Sauron. They're not as powerful as Sauron, but they're still scary. The orcs are even still scary. And so they add tension and drama depending on the situation. I think we need a good amount of that. We can't just have the only dark guy being the big bad evil guy and his little gremlins that crawl around the land like lurkers and whatnot. So, yeah, if each mountain hold was a full page, each race will be half a page. Yeah, I think so. Mordheim. What is Mordheim? Oh, it's a skirmish game. Is it the I actually don't I've never even heard of Mordheim. What the heck? Tabletop game published in 1999. Variant of fantasy game. So is it the kill team equivalent of Age of Sigmar? Because that'd be kind of cool. Okay. Winged gargoyle, vampire looking night creatures. Yeah, that's definitely a good part of it. I mean, we've kind of gone with a little bit of gothic horror aspect to it. Speaking of orcs, where do we stand on them? Spire Home. Kill team of the old world Warhammer. That's really cool. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, orcs. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on orcs and goblins and whatnot. So I think part of what distinguishes modern fantasy is that the previously monstrous races are now more nuanced and are basically just the same as every other race. There are, and which I think lends itself to great politics in a D&D type setting, or a trying to think of other fantasy things that aren't tabletop role-playing games. But it gives you like good orc factions and bad orc factions, and it gives you good human factions, bad orc or bad human factions, good dwarves, bad dwarves, whatever, and it gives you this really interesting politics of a bigger world. But for old school, it's almost like goblins aren't even like goblins are seen as the same as zombies. Like they're these just like unrelenting, just savages basically. So I don't really know exactly where we'll land, but I feel like we'll probably lean a little bit more towards orcs have a culture like more civilized than say goblins or like bears and wolves, but they're primarily they're in servitude of chaos. Kind of, I don't know, but maybe that feels too much like Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It's hard to not feel like you can't be 100% unique without going into Brandon Sanderson territory, which we've talked about is great, but just won't work for Spirehelm. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Picture the silly analogy of weeds growing everywhere in your yard garden at once, destroying it as much as you weed. They keep coming, corrupting existing plants. Yeah. Where are all these coming from? The answer is the Dark One. Exactly. It's like people people know, or at least speculate. Some people know, some people speculate, and some people have no idea. Obviously, information in an age like this isn't. There is no internet. It's not like some Aletheist can just pull out his phone and make a tweet and just be like, "Hey guys, by the way, all this bad stuff that's happening is from the Dark One." Um, the archive would know. They'd be like, "Oh gosh, this is bad. We know what this means." And so the collectors and the other people in villages might be like, "I feel like this is kind of about it's kind of what happened in the old legends or whatever." And then some people would be like, "I have no idea. All I know is we've been attacked and I just want to get back to blacksmithing and I can't because everybody in my town is a zombie, basically." Old Man Tolkien used races, allegories, and orcs were just as the force of evil. Yeah, like they were what the Dark One is to Spirehelm. Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, no, Tolkien said he doesn't like, he doesn't view Lord of the Rings as an allegory, but there is a lot of symbolism. Like an allegory, I think, is defined as like a one for one versus like symbolism can be anywhere. And we've all obviously got some amount of symbolism in Spirehelm, but I also kind of lean on the side of like I don't want everything to have a real world meaning or have a direct connection to something because then it gets frustrating because then you have to think of everything beforehand and then yeah it's hard. Um, yeah, he gave them more nuance in later works. Yeah, dragons as a result of an outer god entering Spirehelm. Yeah, we talked a little bit about potentially having dragons. This was in like an offshoot discussion of dragons being like a almost like a their own powerful demigod race, and it's like it could be connected to an outer god of some kind. And then as you grow in power, the temptation to be corrupted and to use the power for corruption and evil grows with you. And if you give into it, you become a dragon, like a full-fledged dragon of legend, and the archetypical like hoarding dragon, hoarding the gold, killing villages to steal their goods and whatever. And those who don't give in to the evil become like Aletheus, where he's seen as like this benevolent god, but he's more like a man with dragon qualities, which are seen as like powerful and whatnot, but not necessarily inherently evil. It's just the ones that use it for evil are the ones who become corrupted and grow. But the corruption actually gives them more power because they're abusing it, and no allegory to be made, whatever you want to say. There is like, obviously you could draw some connections between power in the real world and dragon power if we went that route. But I think it's a cool fantasy to have where you could have somebody who was previously benevolent and was gifted this power and used it for good, and then over time became corrupted and then abused the power, overthrew a town or a village or whatever, and became this monster and this beast that people now are afraid of. And so I think outside of just the Dark One's forces of chaos and evil and the good of the kingdom, there could be this third different type of power that would be draconic in nature, which I think could be really cool. Because we talked also about potentially this realm is a older realm that has been wiped out a couple of times. Not that we're playing in a post-apocalyptic of any sort, but that the dwarves and the elves are remnants of a past age wiped out by the darkness, and they have legends of darkness that people and our collectors are going out to uncover and translate and whatever. But that's why they're also not as populous as the humans or the man races, whatever. And dragons could also be a part of that, where they existed in that previous time. They also died to the forces of chaos because maybe they were corrupted and they couldn't work together. And yet now there's Aletheus is back, and so they see this as like a sign of, okay, we have a powerful person, but the dragons are still rare because they were also too wiped out. And that gives you like the amount of rarity that you need, and dragons aren't flying around like Burke in How to Train Your Dragon, but they're also not one of a kind or impossible to find. So I don't know. I think that could be a cool fantasy if we go that direction. But yeah. I agree with goblins being beasts. That makes sense. I think orcs should be more nuanced. I think they have a lot of variation to the classic races in fantasy. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is it kind of all depends on where do orcs come from. Because with Tolkien, they weren't their own race originally, I don't think. At least in the movies, they're not portrayed that way. They're a creation of like basically magically bastardized elves. Is that kind of a good way to put it? Like they have to be like made, like created in like the mud of whatever, I don't know. Also want some spirits. Yeah, there aren't very many spirits. I agree. We need some cool forest spirits and whatnot. Oh yeah, goblins could have a direct connection to the Dark One, while orcs don't. Goblins could be triple reflection of the orcs. Um, Spitballing. Orcs were able to interact with the kingdom in a formal manner at the very least. Corruption is good key theme. Uh-huh. And I'd love if there were a few rare large elder dragons, which are these divine creatures. Oh yeah, yeah. See, that could be cool. That could be cool if like there's yeah some sort of divine, kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. How there's like those two dragons that Zuko and Aang go to, where they're like swirling around, like those type of spirits where there's and they gift somehow we could figure out the lore and the mechanics of it if we even wanted to. But the legends could say that they gift power to individuals of promise or individuals randomly or whatever. And that's how the dragonborn are, or the dragon folk or dragon kin or whatever, come about. And they're seen as outer gods similar to the Venerants, or maybe something between them. I don't really know. Or maybe just some cultures believe that they are where the Venerants are, and other people believe the Venerants are more man-like, since, you know, that doesn't seem out of place. But we've also talked a little bit about the fact that just going to, well, nobody really knows is kind of a cop-out. So I wouldn't want it to be too vague. But yeah, I think it could be cool to have them be an outer god of some kind, and people can, a dragon man can never become one of them, but he could abuse the power enough to become a monster and a beast of themselves, which would be really cool. Um, Morgoth turned elves into orcs in the old works. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, let's get some stuff done. I'm trying to think of where to even start. We don't have anything for the city of Spirehelm. This is to be continued. Grand Archive, it's not bad. Lords and Rulers is to be continued. Pantheon, Venerants. I mean, I don't even know if this needs to be a separate page. This could be the same thing, and the subpage could be churches and worship, which we also talked about. Religion and gods is one that we, I think it Joe or Char. Somebody had a really good idea one of the last couple streams of in there are like locations that people worship at that are like universal across the world or the realm, and while each location might have their own twist on it, they could have like an altar to Leatrice, an altar to Alithius, or an altar to someone else. Um, yeah, I don't know. So that one could be interesting. Races and people. Obviously, this is a realm event in the works. Probably in the next one or two. I'd imagine it probably wouldn't be one of the next two or three. Sanctiarchs, and the Knights Sanctiarch, which this may be a little bit confusing, so we may need to refigure out how we name these. These are placeholders. We're still figuring stuff out. The Throne, Valenhold. We can update some of this, but I think I'll wait until the final submissions are done, where people are really happy with where they've landed. For those of you who are the winners or the submitters or whatever and collaborating. Beasts, dragons, regions of the realm, broad mount. Okay, so let's do manifestations, because I think this is one that we've talked about a lot but haven't really finished. So let's see. Mandatory god worship part in every town. Yeah. The more evil the dragon, the more human or something. I was thinking the opposite. The less human they become if they get more evil. Where it was required and could still be primarily dedicated to a specific god, but it could be used for any and all gods. Yeah, that could be cool. And then in like the city, in the Spirehelm city, you'd have a church for each god, like in some big square or something. You know, you'd have each one would have their own little chapel or something, which would be really cool. And some people might make a what do they call that? Oh my gosh, what is it called when you go somewhere? Patronage? No. There's a name for when you travel across the world to go to a spot to worship. I can't remember what the name is. Anyways. Pilgrimage. Thank you, Mir. That's the one. Pilgrimage, yeah. You can make a pilgrimage to to the great city of Spirehelm, which for some people, especially in this age, is going to be nearly impossible. Like, it would be a great trek, and you could write entire stories about a group of pilgrims, worshippers taking their pilgrimage, and like 3 of them make it to the city out of 20 that left on this journey. That could be that's a really cool thing to have happen. So, can all agree that domains belong to the gods and something else goes to Ignispecs, like bailiwick or dominion? We can distinguish the wordings. Yeah, we should probably distinguish some of that as well. Yeah, that's a hard one because part of the project we want to be accessible to people who don't need. I don't want to make people learn basically an entire lexicon of definitions and meanings for stuff. Bailiwick is indeed a real word that would fit very well, but I've never heard it, and I don't know how many people would have. But I do agree that dominion and domain are very close. And so it could be helpful to have one of them switch to something else. I'm just trying to think. Let's see. Let's work through this. Let's design something. So let's look up, let's see, dominion definition. Supreme authority, sovereign rule, or a territory controlled by a ruler. So territory controlled versus domain. Okay, that's no, not domain name, no. General meaning. A specific field of study, activity, or interest. A land or property owned or controlled by a single ruler, government, or owner. And so this is where I feel like the Ignispecs makes sense. A specific field of study, activity, or interest. But it also makes sense for a land or property owned or controlled by a single ruler, which is exactly what would make sense for a god. They have domain over fate. They have domain over magic. They have domain over knowledge, artistry. And so that's really where it's difficult. Webster Dictionary. Let's do domain. Ignispecs is a made-up word, but it doesn't necessarily mean something. It's not referring to. It's like it's a name. It's not necessarily like a. I guess what is a domain? I don't even know. I don't know what this word is. What type of word? Realm, but we're using realm for the area. Field, department, kingdom. We've already used. Element. See, element works when you're talking about gods. Of gods, like your typical god of fire, god of water, god of whatever, Poseidon. Those make sense for elements. Domain is already used most often with gods. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, dominion and domain are so similar that it's like really hard. Let's go here. Kingdom specialty. Oh, there it is, bailiwick. Or Ballywick. Yeah, this one technically does make more sense for the Ignispecs compared to domain or dominion making more sense for the gods. Office or jurisdiction of a bailiff. Superior knowledge or authority, special domain. Fief, precinct, because a lot of this comes down, these are like talking about areas of like jurisdiction, turf, compass, subfield, dimensions, amplitude, subspecialty, reach. Ken, never heard of Ken. Because really what I really wanted with the Ignispecs was for it to be evocative and like inspirational. So when you read it, the Ignispecs is the most confusing term in the whole thing, and the rest of it you read and you go, oh, I totally understand where this is going. You read like the where is it? Bring with you the kindling of their domain, and heed well their counsel. Like when you read this is, you might be a little bit confused, But as they scry into the flames of your offerings, like between these two lines, you can kind of tell what's going on, in my opinion. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Nobody had any idea what was going on when they read this. But I feel like this is fairly straightforward. And so if you said, bring the kindling of their bailiwick or ballywick, then you might go, what does that mean? And then you would need a section to say, what is bailiwick or ballywick, and what does it mean, and how does it apply to this? And that's where I wouldn't want to have too many extra having to have definitions for people to understand. Yeah, this is a hard one. Yeah, it can't be dominion and domain. I agree. Ballywick does sound a bit more Old English. You could also see Old English terms for domain. Let's use this and not a AI overview. Dements. Demesne. Held for lords on use. Dem is house. Okay. Domini. Domain. Oh, wow. Okay. Cool. Sphere, area, orbit. Domesday book. Jurisdiction. Discipline. But discipline implies practice a little bit, in my opinion. I don't know if discipline makes as much sense. I feel like we're going to want to save this word for something else. Inspire Helm, inevitably. Maybe they're discipline or choice. Oh, there you go. I vote Ignispecs. What does that mean? For the future realm events? Or you vote Ignispecs for what? Discipline. Yeah, discipline could work. Disciplina, discipline. And or we could make up a word if that's close to discipline, if by reading the word you understand that it really means discipline, just a fancy way of saying discipline. Because that's really my biggest gripe with Ballywick, is it has no root, no part of this word is recognizable to an English speaker, because it's far enough. I don't know where it comes from. It's cool. It's a great word and I like it. And I wouldn't be opposed to people using it in the realm as a word. Like, I'm not saying like this word is banned. I'm just saying from an official standpoint of me and us trying to communicate information to newcomers who are saying like, I want to make an Ignispecs. I saw a TikTok about it. I don't want them to have to leave, the Discord or the website to go find what does bailiwick mean and end up somewhere else. So, oh, we're not renaming Ignispecs to Ballywick. We're trying to figure out the difference between their domain versus the domain of a god. Because if we call them both domains, people may assume they overlap, or they'll just get confused when you're talking about them. And I think when you're talking about an Ignispecs and their domain versus a god and their domain versus a king and their domain, it is fairly easy. But I do think we could be a little bit more clear and pick a better word for the Ignispecs and what they are over versus a god and what they are over. So, because we talk about dominions, but I think dominions and domain are basically interchangeable. And I think people will interchange them. I don't think people will be careful enough, not in a bad way, but like I don't think people will take the time to differentiate versus a dominion of a god and a domain of an Ignispecs. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Do we do the discipline, a field, a something? And so we've talked about Ballywick, which is technically a real word, a regional activity, knowledge, or influence. But it doesn't resonate, I don't think, enough with people who would be new to the project. their kindling, their craft. That could also work. Let's go back to ignispecs. There are those who can see the unseen. Limited by one element, the flame. If you dare to desire answers the unknowable, seek audience with the ignispecs, bring with you the kindling of their craft, bring with you the kindling of their discipline, and heed well their counsel. It could be also a thing. I like the craft gets me on the right on an interesting tangent of what if they're seen as like artists of a kind. You bring them kindling, and out of it they make this flame art that to them they can read, and to you get to participate in this whirlwind of, and this, these dancing flames that you may not understand, but to them it's like this secret thing, an art, a lost art. Maybe not lost art, but a mystic art of some kind. Hearth, to connect them to fire more. True. One thing I do, this line right here, limited only by one element, the flame, does make me think a little bit that they are somehow connected to the god of fire, which I don't think we want. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I intended for the ignispecs to be its completely own thing, like unconnected to, like they're so mysterious that people don't know whether they're good or bad, and that the archive themselves can't make a decision on it because they may rely on them somewhat for some things, and otherwise, like, because there are clear like good and evils, obviously, and then there are some things like we talked about the dragons potentially being this, like, they're not really, some of them could be for the Dark One. The Dark One could have dragons, but so could the kingdom, and the king is a dragon or part dragon. And so I think similarly, like, we wouldn't necessarily want the ignispecs to be servants of the fire god, the conduit of fire, because then that kind of locks them into, okay, well, if they're serve the Venerants, or if they're part of if they're something from the Venerants, like the kingdom believes they are, then it kind of gets confusing. So I almost want them to be outside of it. And whether or not, we could do this in multiple ways. One way, we talked about color being, visual distinctions. Some people have been thinking of the Dark One more as a purple color, and or a red color. Those are kind of like the two most stereotypical, which I think is evocative and people understand. I think if we try to make it too unique, then people may be like, why is this like bright yellow, the evil guy? He looks like he's an angel, which is less evocative, I think. So I think going with that is good. And so if we went with Leatrice being the conduit of fire, and her fire is the typical orange-red fire, we could go with the ignispecs being their own thing. They have a green fire, or they have a blue fire, or they have some white flame that is without color, and to them, and it separates them. It proves that they are not they're not related to the conduit of fire, because their flame burns different than the other flames. And so I think that could visually distinguish them. Or I think there is some cool stuff to be had in the science of fire and how certain elements burn differently, and so certain ignispecs, unscience related, but in the same way that we know, I think, is it sodium? Or I don't remember which one burns green, but it would be cool if, for example, the ignispecs of moss burns green flame, and the ignispecs of bones burns white flame, and stuff like that. That could be cool. I'm not opposed to any of those ideas, or just having them have their own color, and purple flame equals the Dark One and darkness, red flame equals neutral. It's just the flames that people use to light their homes, it's the flames they use to cook food, it's also the flames that burn down cities. And purple is evil, white is the ignispecs, and it's mysterious. Otherwise, copper is the one, yeah, that burns green. So yeah, craft isn't bad. Let's see, copper, potassium. Potassium burns purple. Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily want to rely on it, and like, okay, well, if the Dark One is purple flame, then then he must have some ability to control potassium or something. Like, we're not going into that. But I think the fact that flames in our world do burn different colors is cool, and we could use that to visually distinguish which type of fire we are talking about. And that fire could behave differently. For example, the Ignispex fire could maybe not burn you. It could be something that you could touch and it doesn't burn, versus the Dark One's purple fire could, like, absolutely, like, you touch it once and it's just not even burn. It's like your skin's falling off, like radiation levels of, like, just corruption, and it's like frostbite where you can't ever get it back. It's just your skin is like a withered husk or whatever when it becomes corrupted by the purple flame. I don't know. I think having those visual things in mind, thinking them through visually, helps me as an artist, but also I think helps people in the future. If we have this visual language, people will be able to see a purple torch and know immediately, oh my gosh, I understand the context, I understand what this means. And they'll see a white flame and they'll know Ignispex kind of thing. So, I don't know. Red flame creation, black flame destruction, hearth flame feeding. Yeah, not a bad way to look at it. Okay, so do we go craft then? I think craft is probably the closest thing that would distinguish the Ignispex. And it could also lend itself to some more whimsy on the side of the Ignispex. I know the one that I made originally was Silthus, who's like the Ignispex of Bones. And he kind of has that dark fantasy, like, bone, lich, evil, whatever vibe to him. But I think there could be some that are very much, the Ignispex of Scrolls could be more whimsical or spice. You know, I could see them being a lot different than just like these evil looking oracles. So, but I still like the word kindling. I think kindling is a very evocative word. So, bring with you the kindling of their craft, heed well their counsel as they scry into the flames of your offerings, and read from them your truths unknown. So I think that could work. Limited by their craft, a specific type of material with which they can scry. This material sustains their life and fuels their power. Those who desire counsel from the prophets must bring kindling that is of the same craft as the Ignispex. The Ignispex then burn the offering and scry into the flames. While this communication method of each Ignispex differ, they often reveal oracles in rhyme or mystery, twisting truths into riddles. Those lucky enough to encounter one report that their crafts are typically broad enough to account for a variety of material, both in type and amount, leading to an array of prophecies. I think that works. I mean, reading it out loud, it makes sense. That's totally fine. If you want to use bailiwick or ballywick, you totally can. But yeah, I think craft is probably the most clear way to put it that people would understand, and it fits into natural writing. So the way that craft juxtaposes the destruction associated with fire, yeah, it's also true. And that's also probably a good point, is like, well, I guess it's magic. Who cares? If the flames of the Ignispex don't burn you, but it burns the kindling, I think that's also kind of cool. Like, it's inevitable that whatever you bring is destroyed. Like, it's the price, it's the tithe to these oracles. And so I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let's go in here. You guys are going to see behind the screens a little bit. I don't even remember. Compendium page. Oh, no. All compendium pages. Let's see. Ignispex. That is not it. Compendium chapters. There we go. Edit. There. Capital craft or craft? I'll capitalize it elsewhere, not in the poem. Okay. There. Craft. A specific type of material with which they can scry. This material sustains their life, fuels their power, blah, 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 blah. The same craft as the Ignispex. The Ignispex then burn the offering and scry into the flames, while communication methods differ. That they're crafts. are typically broad enough to account for a variety of material, both in type and amount. Okay. The archive, Spire Home, reiterates that the nature of these so-called ignispecs are unknown. Prophecies, while enticing, often lead to obsession and possibly an audience with their own fate. Okay, so that works. And then let's do making an ignispecs, edit, theme. Sorry, I'm just gonna kind of skim through this. If I miss one, let me know. I'm just trying to switch all the word from domain to craft. No single ignispec should be able to offer everything to a supplicant. They speak in riddles and rhymes, only giving information that relates to their craft. We'll keep it lowercase. For someone to gain all they seek, they would need many ignispecs for all their queries to be answered. Okay. Not by importance, by being the order that a person would encounter them, aside from their craft. Obviously, that's the most important one. First encounter a strange and unfamiliar location. Okay. Ignispecs would ask for an offering in return. Promise oracles of truth and desires. That is when the ignispecs may introduce themselves, or when a supplicant would realize who they have found. Lastly, they would realize the limitations of their prophet, depending on their craft and kindling. Meaning the prophecy you get depends on both the craft of the ignispecs and what type of kindling you bring in relation to that craft. They may receive different oracles. Keep this in mind when writing or creating something regarding your ignispecs or others' ignispecs. Craft. Arguably the most important part of ignispecs is their craft. Pick something narrow that still allows for variability in offerings. Bad example, plants. Good example, roses. Okay. Consider different types of kindling that a supplicant might bring to your ignispecs. If you can think of a few types but not hundreds, then you're on the right track. Sanctum, okay. Countenance, okay, whatever. For their craft. Better yet, something unsettling or strange. Where each ignispecs is limited to their craft. Their oracles should be limited by which type of kindling a supplicant brings for an offering. These seers are neutral in motive, demanding more for a different oracle. Wait. For a different oracle or prophecy. Oh, that seems better. Where the section is left unspecified, feel free to design a system for your kindlings where each category within your craft offers a look into a different part of the unseen. Non-oracles, okay. Cool. That's that. Now let's double check example edit. Ignispecs of bones, sanctum, countenance, stricture. Let's see here. Sorry, I'll catch up on chat just after I finish this page. Okay, I don't even think this one really. Countenance, stricture. Brings bones of a beast or creature. They kill themselves. They will receive increased specificity into the truth. Found bones offer truth into the past of the creature, perhaps showing the meaning of their demise. Smaller bones or a glimpse. Okay. Bones taken from the living offer the strongest of prophecies, though not many dare to offer such a tithe. Love that. I love that. I love the ignispecs. I think I know they're like my own little baby child of creation, but man, I think they're really fun. And I'm really excited to see how they influence the lore going forward. So, craft. Okay, we're good. Let me catch up on stuff. Craft, kindling. Yeah, I think we leave kindling as the name of the tithe, and we leave craft as the name of their specialty, whatever. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if I think some people could speculate that they would be linked to the god of fire, but I think their nature is just so different that I don't know if someone who would, if the archive was looking into it, they wouldn't come to that conclusion with enough information. But I think a lot of people might think, oh, well, they just burn stuff, so they must be good. They burn stuff, and they're from the gods, and they're not hurting me when they burn stuff. Their flame doesn't even hurt, so it must be the god of fire protecting me through them. So I think that's totally a fair assumption for somebody to make, even if they're completely wrong about at their conclusion, which I think is fun. Also, idea for saints, there are people who became so entwined with their domain they became inseparable. Like the saint of knowledge might be so wise that their knowledge rivals the god of wisdom itself. That could be cool. Basically, fuse with the domain they are saint of. The saint of flame becomes literally living fire or something. That could be cool though. Yeah, I agree. Saint has some implications with history, but I don't know how saint has been used in fantasy media. I don't know too much. Does sound like the lesser gods we discussed previously. Yeah, I think that would probably be a really good way to do lesser gods. Is talk about lesser gods. I think this page needs a page. Oh, I think that's the reason we did Pantheon. We're going to do the Venerants, and then we're going to have lesser gods as its own page over here. But yeah, I think lesser gods, you could have something like that, almost a saint of sorts, like an object of worship that is between you and the Venerants that you could worship. It could be, and they could be of all different types. And I think those type of stories are really cool. Ignis specs are great. Love to see more stuff around them. Yeah, me too. I don't know where to bring them back in. Once I came across the idea, because I knew we needed some sort of mysterious, the pondering the orb, going to the oracle, those are like really cool stuff. And once it clicked for me, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to put this in there. There are some other ideas that I watched an entire YouTube video this last week about somebody talking about killing your darlings, which is like the idea that even the things that you design that you love the most, if they don't serve as a tool to where you're trying to get, you kind of have to get rid of them. It's a really big thing in game design, which is what this guy was doing. They're making their own TTRPG. In art, it happens all the time. You do a thumbnail and you're like, man, this is looking great. And then you get it partway through and you have to go, oh my gosh, I have to change this whole thing. But I really love the way I did this. And you just sometimes have to be willing to get rid of it. Luckily, I don't think the Ignis specs are that way. I think they actually serve a lot of stuff really, really well. I think some of the other stuff I've come up with, I've now, like the Venerants was one of the examples. When we came up with the stream way back in the day, we talked about all of these different things. We made them really cool, and they were going to be people in the world, and they were going to have their council and stuff. I was like, dang, this is really sick. And then I went, oh, but this doesn't make sense for Spirehelm. It just doesn't fit the vibe, even if it's really cool. And that's one of those things where it's like, we have to kind of kill the darling, be willing to get rid of it, and move on. Because if we just get stuck with, I like this idea, then you can't see past, well, does this idea actually connect with stuff? Is it beneficial? So yeah, I really love the Ignis specs, and I'm glad that it fits into the world as smoothly as it does. And I'm excited to see where it goes from there. Ignis specs of drugs. Wow, that sounds great. Ignis specs of narcoticus. That's pretty funny. Let's see. We need to do more orb pondering in Spirehelm. Yeah. Orb of pondering is just a link to a random submission. Now that's a good idea, Moth. That could be actually sick. Just an entire page up here, or just like on the main page, there's just an orb in the corner with like a little GIF that like animates, and you can just click it, and it'll just take you to a random either user submission or a random compendium of knowledge page that's just completely random. I don't know how I'd randomly generate that. I'd need some help on the website end, probably, but that would be actually so sick. I'm gonna write that down actually, because that would actually be super fun. Actually, let me just write it down right here. Pages. Sure. Let's just edit this one. Compendium of knowledge. Orb of knowledge goes here. .gif. That'd be fun. The Orb of Pondering meta is falling behind nowadays. Yeah, what are you on, Mir? Like books or something? Orb is meta. I feel like the Ignis specs could act similarly in stories the way the Oracle of Delphi does in Greek myth, where it's a common part of leaving on expedition and adventuring. Yeah, and I like the idea that, because we talked a little bit about in Oracles, or in the Ignis specs, that I want to give you guys a lot of freedom, like always. I I agree that if it's too vague and we don't have enough, it's like nobody really knows, then it's really hard to define what makes something important. But I do like the idea that some ignispecs are easy to find and they are there. So it's like the Oracle of Delphi, like you know, okay, I'm going to leave. There's an ignispex in at the outer walls of Spirehelm, and as you're leaving, you go and visit it. You bring it something really easy like a leaf or like a little bit of blood or something like that. And it's like it's just what people do. It's a part of the ritual of leaving on a quest. And then in other ways, it's like, okay, well, I need something more specific, but I need to find this guy, and he just vanishes randomly. And so I'm going town to town saying, have you guys heard anyone talk about the ignispecs of bones? And they're like, oh, some guy came through here talking about the ignispecs of bones. I'm like, oh, great, where did he go? And like, I don't know. He was just traveling through. He went north. And then you have to go to the next village north, and you're like, okay, did anybody here see it? And you're like, oh yeah, he was here 3 weeks ago. And you're like, what do you mean? They said he was here 2 days ago in the other village. And then you're going around in this like wild goose chase until you finally are in the woods, just like at wit's end, and you finally stumble across him, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's here. Wait, but I don't have any bones. Do I leave and potentially never see this ignispex ever again, or do I go in and sacrifice my own pinky to make sure that I get the oracle I need? And so I think having like a mix of those, where some can be like just an old man in the village that's just like, oh yeah, our ignispex is here in the village. We have one. His name's Joe. It's like, what? What do you mean, Joe? And it's like, oh yeah, he's Joe, the ignispex of dirt. And you just bring him a pile of dirt and he'll tell you something about it. And it's like, what is that? What good is that? And then I like the idea of also the more powerful, the more rare is kind of like the trope that we're going with. You know, the more powerful the dragon, the more rare they're going to be. The more powerful the magic, the harder it is to achieve. The more powerful the ignispecs, the more evasive they will become. And so you could have some that give extremely sought after, you know, the rare shiny Pokemon cards of the prophecies, but yet they are hard to come by, and they don't have one location. They're all around. So that would be really, really cool. Ignispecs related trauma. Joe is the Ignispecs of dirt. Joe is just the first name I thought of. That is not what I'm calling Joe the Chronicler. That has no relation whatsoever. Okay, let's see here. What's the opinion on dead gods? Because I love them. I think where was the dead gods section? Oh, no, it is. It's in Wells of Power. Let me leave this up while I read through the rest of the chat, and then we'll get to that. Orb of Pondering takes you to an archive-made instruction page on how to ponder an orb and how to do it safely without losing yourself to the ponder. That's pretty funny. I don't want to ever step on toes by making a dead god. Yeah, that's a fair point. Very specific. Did this happen to you recently, Cam? Yeah, I was on a wild goose chase to get the ignispecs of bones. It took forever. Rip Joe, the ignispecs of dirt. No. Okay. GA said it, so it's canon. Yeah, so one of the things I think Moth brings up a good point. The dead gods, this is where benediction draws its power from living and present deities, and Athergy draws its power from the dead and exiled gods. Its dark nature has left it mysterious and discouraged by many. So this is like a common, once again we talk about the experience of fantasy. What is the fantasy? What are the experiences that people would want to write about or have in a game or see in a show? And I think worshiping dead gods or seeing people who worship dead gods is one of those fantasies. But then it brings up the point. Where are you allowed to make a dead god if it has major implications on other people's stuff? And I think we may have to do a realm event for the venerant level dead gods. Although we've talked, I mean, theoretically the dark one is the only venerant level main god. I mean, if he was the 12th before Alythius, I mean, Alythius isn't a conduit technically, not an official venerant, but culturally people look up to him the same. If the dark one was there, then it would be the 12, but he was banished or whatever. And so now it's just these guys. So I think if we were going to do big overarching stuff, Moth, it would have to be probably a realm event at some point of like, here are the dead gods that people worship. But I think, like we said, the minor deities are free reign. If it's this used to be like the saint of knowledge type of thing like you were talking about, but they're worshiping some dead god of ages past or whatever, I don't think that has too big of implications on everything else enough to the point where you'd be stepping on people's toes. I think it's probably fine as is. Okay, that's really good. I think that helps a lot with the Ignis specs. I like how this section will probably be, because I thought about having magic mixed into one of these, but magic isn't really necessarily a force of darkness, nor is it part of the kingdom, nor is it part of the gods. I think magic is outside of gods, good and evil alike. I think magic is just what makes this realm fantasy, really. And we've talked a little bit about before how magic is what the other people do. It's not what we do. And so from the Wells of Power, the arcanism and benediction are just, that's the stuff we've always done, where we look at the stars, we read the stars, we tell stories in the stars, we give blessings and gifts to people, and our king blesses us with protection. He blesses some of the archivists with higher knowledge. He blesses the knights with their protection and their power. And then these other forms of magic are more mysterious, veiled, or cursed, where some are seen as completely outright evil, and others are seen as like, we don't really know. And I think so too is the Ignis specs. It's not the type of magic that we do. It's the type of magic that is beyond us, that we don't understand, and that we may never, and we will never in this realm, understand. They'll never figure out how well or how an Ignis specs works, or how their magic functions and stuff like that. So okay, I see you, open page, see you, Lizard Pasta. Thanks for hopping in. I'm gonna take a quick break to go to the bathroom, and then we will be back and we will work on manifestations of darkness, because I think this is a big one that we've talked about, like redoing the death storms. I don't know if Char is still in here, but we've talked about that, and I think we should touch on that and overgrowth and figure out what that looks like. So I will be back shortly. Can you hear me? All right, we're back. Okay, let's see here. So, manifestations of darkness. We need to do a little bit of correction on this. Just like changing the direction that this is going. So, originally, we talked about, oh, also, before I forget, let me go back here. I need to add a page called map. Put the map. Can't type. Publish. Will that screw everything up? Or is that fine? Okay, well, at least we have it. I don't know why it's not showing up here at the top, but whatever. Okay, so originally we talked about, the original idea was, we have these death storms that come over the Titans and sweep across the realm, killing everything in their path. which was cool. Once again, killing your darlings. That was cool, but I don't think it works super well. It brings up a lot of complication when trying to create one-off stories. You have to consider the path of the storm and the direction it's going, and would have to weave around places that you don't want to destroy and end up at places that you do want to destroy, which is just going to get really complicated. So I think it makes more sense for storms to roll over the Titans, but not carry across the entire land. And they just kind of roll over, bring chaos and death to the nearby area, and then they fizzle out and they die. Whatever, the fog kind of like settles. But we also still need ways for the rest of the realm to be affected by darkness, which I think we've talked about a little bit differently than death storms. So I don't think we even call the death storms. So we need a name for not even this. We need a new name for this type of things. Let's see. These things will come up with a funeral rain or blessing that prevents ghosts done by the death god, and the dark one prevents these to make his armies of dead. That's interesting. What could we possibly use other than death storms? That's the hard thing. This may be one where we need to come up with a new name, like Ignispecs, where the name that is referring to this thing is unique to Spirehelm, but the actual thing that's happening, once you read like a one-sentence description of it, is like, oh, I get it. I know what this means now. I don't know if I have any references. I've been trying to pull stuff up that feeds to my vision of what I'm talking about, but it's really hard to find. Like I've searched like dark portal. This doesn't really bring up the right thing. I mean, this looks more like that. Like this isn't what I'm talking about. This is a cool fantasy thing, but it's not necessarily this type of thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about something a little bit more like this. But I think of it more appearing on things spontaneously. Something more like this, but like on the ground. So if it's like you're wandering through the forest and you see this little like bubble up on the floor, and then it's like these little gremlin like slugs are crawling out of it, and as it gets bigger and more dangerous creatures can crawl out of it, and whatever. Yeah, that's probably a good point. Ephemera, is that we need to figure out what the color of the dark one is. Those of you who are here, when you think of the dark one's magic, do you think red and black like this? Or do you think purple and black? Or do you think of something else entirely? Because I think now is not a bad time to decide the visual language. And the reason I say that is I really like, let me open up a duplicate. Shifting colors, interesting. I really like this vibe. I know this, I think it's Lord of the Rings, might be. Yeah, this is Minas Morgul. I like the red sun aesthetic. I like the feel of this sort of thing. This is AI. These are just vibes. I think there's something about this that feels really cool, very dark fantasy, very awesome. And I originally considered, and I think I'm still on the idea, I still like the idea that every night when the sun sets, earlier than when it sets, it goes behind the dark clouds beyond the Titans and casts a shade of red across the entire land. And so then you get this really cool visual art style. When you know it's time to go to bed, you get this type of stuff happening because the sun is setting and you get this really cool color stuff. You get the vibes of the red, all that. I think that's cool. And then during the day, you get your typical whimsical fantasy with light greens of the forests and whatnot. And at night, you get this kind of ridiculous red hue that just covers everything. And red, like, yeah, exactly, pasta. It's like the red is just so iconically evil. It's very distinguishable. But a lot of these, even these pieces that I'm showing you guys, there's red and there's purple and there's black. In this one, mostly just red. But a lot of these have red and purple. And they don't necessarily have to be linked. We could still have red sunsets and have the dark one's magic be purple. That's totally fine. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. But I just wonder if that'll get confusing. I mean, we're not using red for much else. We haven't really chosen colors for anything. The Spire Home logo is red, though. Yeah. No reason. Yeah, no. So I don't know. I think this vibe, I think having like every night when the sun sets, it gets that way is really cool. But also, this is totally fine. I mean, this is AI again. All of these, a bunch of these touchstone pieces are like AI. But that's cool. Shifting colors. Okay. Meant to be attractive to everyone. Interesting. Purple and monochrome. The problem with red is we have the logo Spire Helm is red. The Abyss. Dark one. Living Shadow. Yeah. Retro VHS purple, orange distortion. Also cool. I don't know if I have a ton of pictures in here that are actually like legit art. I mean, I do have some. I think right around here is where I've transitioned most of them to not have AI in this section. I don't know. I do not know. There's some vintage Warhammer. I don't know if Ollie's still here. So a lime green and deep purple. Oh, like I don't know if I should show that one. That one has like nipples on it, I think. I think I know what you're talking about with lime green and deep purple. It's like the old school comic art type of like this type of lime green purple. This sort of thing, I think, is what you're talking about. Magenta. Yeah. Like this is very, very old school dark fantasy. Yeah. Which is really, really cool. Which I'm totally down for. Because I think the hard thing is too, like we're mixing a bunch of different mediums into one. You have this. You also get, I'm gonna need another one. Duplicate. You also have one of my favorites, which is like Frank Frazetta. Let's find some of his work. Come on. You have like this. This is Horley, not Frazetta, but very similar. I'm sure Frazetta is on here somewhere. This sort of thing is one aesthetic. This is like the comic aesthetic, but it gets really close to like dark fantasy animation, retro fantasy animations like the Black Cauldron, Sword in the Stone, that sort of thing. And then you've also just got this more modern take on things, which is this sort of modern gothic dark fantasy aesthetic. Yeah, Frank is him, honestly, in so many ways. Frank Frazetta is one of my favorites. I don't know if this is a Frazetta or not. It's not. But, or is that? Is that? That might be a Frazetta signature. I don't know. I love his stuff. So, when thinking about colors, I want them to translate roughly. Like this one's so tough. Holy cow. I want them to translate roughly between mediums because I do think this stuff is really cool. But also, if somebody pulls up in real life with this color behind them, people are going to get confused. Like it's not. This is not super translatable to realism in a sense, and costuming or that sort of thing. Like if we wanted to create a piece like this, it would not work with these exact colors. Although there could be some purples, there could be some magentas and whatnot. A mirage that shifts between the colors, that could be cool. If you blink, it's too late. Humanoid bunch of Kirby dots. Kirby dots are also cool. Anything bright that doesn't naturally occur is awesome. That's also true. Because we'll have the greens that will feel foresty and whatnot. Blue is the sky. Purple isn't really something you get in nature. Magenta isn't really something you get in nature other than like flowers, I guess, are probably the two where you'd see that. We just can't fall into the trap of it's been done, it's fantasy, odds or something like this has already been done. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, red, classic, easy to read. Second choice would be dark purple. It's formed of only secondary colors. I don't know if that's necessarily a strict principle, but yeah, you could still see green, purple, almost a red naysayer. Yeah, that's why I'm so conflicted on it, because I feel like red is cool. But red, even in real life, in so much media, red is often representative of passion in a way, but also the two sides of it. It can be rage and evil, but it can also be like love and like blood, which is like your life essence. And Sanguinius Peak of the Valenholds, if it's like dripping red and red is seen as a color immediately and exclusively of the dark one, then you run into some problems whenever anybody wants to use any amount of red. But at the same time, just because there's red elsewhere doesn't mean that the dark one can't also have red on his side. Ugh, yeah, it's hard. I am currently leaning more towards the red purple combo, with red being allowed to be this red of the book or also the magenta of the moon. It depending on how you're stylizing it, depending on how intense it is, these different things. Red is often in like comics, like that's a torch and it's red, but the center is green and the outside is pink. So red is a rough color, but I think something like this, purple, red, and also because just because it's red won't make it evil inherently, but I think having the dark one have access to red as a form of his power is not a bad thing. Oh, I'm in the wrong tab. Let me go. I'm gonna pick an AI image, which is terrible, but I think there are some in here that get it clearer than most. Like this one's cool. I like this. And obviously between red and purple is magenta and the pinks. So red, violet, magenta, lime green, yellow, and black. Yeah, those are kind of like the main colors of dark fantasy in general. So yeah, like red can be the primary color of both sides, while having the dark one's secondary color be purple, and the realms be gold because light. Yeah, that's also a good point. Because like if every night the realm is under red light, then the red with gold, a normal yellow fire, is one image, and the red with a purple flame or a purple fire or whatever is a different, and they both have access to this power, this passion, this blood, lifeblood, whatever, and yet they are opposing in evil and whatnot. But yeah, something like this is totally cool as well. And I mean, sunsets don't work like a perfectly single hue. It's a shift, and so you would get a red first, the whole land would be red, and then as it sets, it would shift to a magenta, and then a purple, and then you'd have blackness and darkness over the night, which people would understand to be don't go outside, stay inside. When there's darkness, when there's red, when there's purple, when there's this aura about the realm, you're immediately under danger. Is this one real? No. Also AI. So much of Pinterest is AI. I have all the Pinterest recommendations for AI turned off, and if you click on a single one, then all the rest of the recommendations under that image are AI. It just sucks. But yeah, I think we probably go with that. I think red is a mutual color. It is just, and red is such a fundamental color of art in general that I think it'd be really hard to say red represents the dark one entirely. But I think it'd also be hard to say that the dark one never uses red either. So I think we kind of land in that that gradient. If you have purple over here, the dark one, you have magenta to red, and then you have red to orange to gold, and you kind of get the kingdom. Does that seem fairly realistic? And this is not a rule by any means. This is a visual indicator, I think, for people. So when you're reading a story and someone mentions purple flames, purple eyes, red eyes, you can understand what's happening. I think that's the most clear thing. I'm trying to think of a good example. I mean, a lot of it in like Stranger Things, you have like the fleshy, sinuous bits that cover things and the vines and the growth. Like that's a visual distinguishing thing that when you see it, you know and you feel. So it's easy. Yeah, green could also be used by the dark one, accents the purple and red really well. 100% agree. Yeah, I think that could totally work. Because yeah, you kind of need this in some ways. So obviously colors are not exclusive. Good guys can use purple. Bad guys can use gold and yellow. These are not mutually exclusive colors. It's just a visual distinguisher that can help us understand things. All of that, let me get a drink so my voice doesn't fry out. All of that to say, when it comes to the death storms, what do they look like? How do they feel? I think we'll have this be some sort of reddish purple with bits of green, if it was looking like this. We haven't 100% decided. But yeah, I think some amount of purplish and green energy, I think, is fair, and probably will get the right vibe. Where something like this, where it's completely multicolored, this is AI? I actually can't tell. This is not AI. Wow, interesting. Something like this feels different. This is not necessarily the same. Although I have seen a lot of fantasy people use every color to represent chaos, which I think it makes sense. That's totally fair. But I think for us, we'll keep it a little bit less rainbow and iridescent. I think it'll be more pure in a way. Since not everything has to be 100% symbolic of like chaos being a representation of every possible outcome and color and everything. So, and then obviously, yeah, deep blacks are going to have their own stuff. Yeah, the dark one moth would definitely not appear anywhere without huge implications, but that's why we need to come up with at some point his henchmen, his main leaders, whatever. Okay. So yeah, now we just need to figure out what does the corruption look like. Let's get back to this. So what does the corruption look like? How does it appear? How does it grow? I think of any other questions that we would need to answer to figure out this sort of thing. Some more red, some more purple, some more green, or a combination of all of them. That wouldn't be bad. So, where am I going with this? I feel like I had a train of thought that I lost. Well, now we're getting all these images that I just clicked on. I think the mountains would still have their own bit of, I don't know if you'd call them storms. It's the fog and this cloudy bits that fall over the Titans that would seed chaos in the close lands. I don't know exactly what we'd call that. I don't know if we still call them death storms or not. And then apart from that, because here's the real thing. This might be where I was going with this. Cognitive knowledge, manifestations. I want there to be multiple forms of manifestations of the Dark One. So there could be violent overgrowth. There could be death storms that come over the Titans but don't go across the whole realm. And then there could also be this thing that we're talking about where there's like this like fissures that open up in the ground, and out of it spews and grows this darkness. And as it grows, it becomes easier to recognize and see where it's coming from, but also harder to deal with, harder to seal up. And then And that could be just one. Those three could be not the only three. There could also be other forms of corruption and manifestations that you guys could come up with on your own. These could just be like the main three categories, or like something to hold on to. I think that's like the real thing, is we can get really creative as long as there is some amount of recognizability, I don't know if that's a word, for people when they see, oh, I get it. We're looking at this fissure that opened up. We're looking at this portal to the lands of exile, whatever that is. So I don't know if that makes sense. Growth is a good way to word it. That is, but I also want to have the violent overgrowth, which I think the best thing we've seen so far from the violent overgrowth was probably from Dreckenhalt, the one from Ronus or Chonk in the Realm events. He messaged me and let me know that his formatting got all screwed up, and that something happened when changing it to a PDF, which is why things got squished. The forest is alive. This section right here, dense trees and bushes that grow at an accelerated rate. Cutting down trees is dangerous because of this, but the area around must be kept clear. Straying from a path is almost certain death. Monsters fill the forest and trees. A night in the forest is almost certain death as well. That kind of vibe, I think, is exactly what I want to have in this section, the violent overgrowth, which I think will be different than this portal of growth. I don't really know what to call it, though. People and artifacts could incur them. Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that. If it has different manifestations, then does growth apply to all of them? Maybe. We should focus on one manifestation, assuming evil is originating from one source. The title each manifestation is categorized under, or malgrowth? Yeah, malgrowth could be a good word as well. But then, I guess that kind of gets into the question. I think, sorry, I'm like thinking through a bunch of things right now. We talked about how violent overgrowth is one of the signs that the age of peace or whatever, age of light, is coming to an end, which means that it is inherently connected to the Dark One. But the violent overgrowth doesn't necessarily look the same as this malgrowth that we're talking about. Let me try to break this down a little bit, because I would have, because in my opinion, the realm. Okay. Here's a good example. So we'll call it malgrowth for now, versus overgrowth or violent overgrowth. Whoops, that is not the button I wanted to press. Well, there we go. It's gone. I don't know why I couldn't find the right button. So the malgrowth would look like lurkers, like a portal into hell in a way, spawns, corruption, and evil. This is like what I picture the malgrowth section. This is what I'm talking about here. Oh wait, no, not here. This page that I'm on is kind of what I'm thinking of for this. The difference between that and the violent overgrowth is this is what leads to lost towns, lost roads, giant bears, wolves, spiders, etc. And like difficult / dense forests. Does that make sense? Like they're not the same type of growth. And I think the most important thing is like spawn. This is something that spawns corruption and evil directly, and this is more of a result of his force being more present. Like the bears wouldn't necessarily be evil, dark bears. They're still just bears. They're just now angrier larger, more dangerous, harder to kill. The spiders are giant and they're now taking children instead of bugs, and that sort of thing. Versus the lurkers are literally bale. Like that's the difference. Like, these are beasts. This is a bale or a baleful shadow or whatever you want to call these monsters. They're not of the world. Even though bears, wolves, spiders are traditional creatures, they are now worse than they used to be. They are now evil. They now appear evil and are more dangerous. Versus this is like directly. This is an active influence of the Dark One. This is a passive effect of the Dark One's influence in the world. Does that kind of make sense? And maybe you could also throw in the death storms then, the clouds that roll over the Titans, are also not active. They may be a passive form of influence in the realm. And maybe that's a better way to define what we're talking about. If we're talking about something active, what do we call it? And if we're talking about something passive that is happening to the realm just because the Dark One is present again, then what does that look like? Because this, yeah, like the giants, bears, and wolves and spiders, they're not going to have purple eyes or red eyes or green. They're not going to be necromancers. They're not going to be these sort of things. They are just themselves. The forest, the trees aren't any eviler. They are just grow faster, and they overgrow things and pull them apart and decay and, do whatever. They twist you and make you lost. Versus this is like, no, I, as the Dark One, have been able to concentrate my power in one specific area, or somebody, one of my followers or one of my acolytes or cultists, has planted an artifact somewhere and has been able to let me interfere with the world directly and curse it, basically. And that's the distinguishing feature. So, overgrowth. I want to keep multiple manifestations, and the term should be more generic. Yeah, I think I agree. Corruption, maybe. Corruption to magic. The powerful mage will destroy themselves and gathering magic. Yeah, I mean, corruption is a vague term that can refer to lots of different things. Because you could have a good person who's corrupted by something other than the Dark One. Like they could just be a corrupt, guild leader in the Maw or something. Cosmic, eldritch, ancient. Imagine they'd also be sinewy roots of the animals and plants. Yeah, probably also in red, purple, and green potentially. Christening sounds like christening, shows he's subverting it. That could be cool. Maybe it's also like a siege on the realm where the storms are like the half-assed constant barrages to weaken defenses. Yeah, it's the opposite of spires and a deer. Maybe something can be built from that. Interesting. Yeah. So maybe, I'm trying to think. What do we... Because really this page... I think you could sum up most of the passive effects of the Dark One with this statement. Violent overgrowth, or just overgrowth if you wanted to simplify it. But something very different than just, oh, I planted some crops and they grew over into the road. This is something very different, so it's violent. But when people are referring to overgrowth in this age, they would know what you're talking about. I think that could work for the passive things. The problem is, what do we call the active corruption that is happening to the realm? What do we call this? And what do we call these portals? We probably want a name for these sorts of things, even if the generic term for these sorts of active corruption has its own term. Malgrowth. Yeah, malgrowth could also work for the violent overgrowth. Or maybe for the, or not for the violent overgrowth, but for death storms, for the active stuff, we could come up with our own name. Somewhere like Nadir, we could do something like that. Mal is always good, yeah, for a good prefix. The Abyssfall, Black Incursion. Yeah. I also think we've talked a lot about how we're writing this whole project from the perspective of the realm. So if us as outsiders were to give it a name, we might give it something very on the nose, but to them, they might see this as something different, and colloquially, they would call it, like, what would a Spirefolk, what would an archivist call this set of patterns, these sets of occurrences that are connected? in some ways. They can see visually they look similar, they feel similar, they're happening with similar things. I wonder, like, what would they call it? The abscess? What is abscess definition? A painful pocket of pus that's formed on the inside of the body. Oh, okay. Definition. Where's Webster's? There we go. A localized collection of pus surrounded by inflamed tissue. Abscess is pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, like an infection. Yeah, I do like that. Like it's almost like it's building up underneath the ground, and then when it, or in a tree or in something, and then when it releases, it's like a spawn point. Isn't there something like that in Castlevania? Those of you who have been watching it or have watched it, isn't that like, don't they kind of spawn out of these like spawn points and just fly out into the world? Am I thinking of that, or am I thinking of something else where like a fissure opens up and it's just like and just flying out like ghosts and stuff? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, we could definitely call the actual portals abscesses. Abscess? Yeah, abscess. I think that's probably a good name for that. We could just call malgrowth, although with overgrowth, if we call overgrowth malgrowth, then we probably want a different name for this. We could just call it corruption. Let's look up corruption and see. Do we have corruption, decomposition, decay, rot, putrefaction? No, putrefaction. What the heck is that? Process by which dead organic matter separates into smaller, simpler substances. That's kind of a cool word. I don't know if it's perfect, but fermentation, festering. Festering sounds good. Ooh, that gave me a good idea for a word. What about festerance? Festerance? Putrefaction was used in Elden Ring. Good to know. I must not have paid very good attention. Welcome in, Laughing Rabbit. Perversion could work, but I feel like perversion implies that something pure was like desecrated and changed. Where that does happen, I think like the lurkers are kind of an example of that. But I think generally not everything is a perversion. But I think people would definitely refer to lots of these corruptions as perversions. Some of them would be perversions, some of them would be abscess. They would have all sorts of different names for different things. I think perversion would definitely fit under the main heading of corruption of something. I've got putrefaction for this and not Bollywick. Yeah, no. I don't think putrefaction is probably a little too far out there. Because that's process dead organic separates into smaller substances. Yeah. Putrefaction Elden Ring. First, the organic decay breakdown. Distinct from the parasitic scarlet rot and is tied to specific lore elements, items, expansions, Shadow of the Erdtree. Ah, that's why I haven't played it yet. I'm playing Shadow of the Erdtree right now, so I haven't seen putrescence. Wow. Putrescence. I think that's the word. How do the people fight this? Yeah, that's what we're gonna kind of get into. Yeah, to play Shadow again for the first time. I know. I'm trying to not like. I'm so conflicted. I'm not a huge gamer. I like playing games. My friend carried me through the entire first Elden Ring, and I loved every second of it. But like, I definitely did not play it as Miyazaki intended, like a lot of people say. And the DLC is very similar, where I'm like, oh my gosh, do I want to grind all day? I do this all day. and then I have school starting up in a couple weeks, and it's like I just don't have the time to grind it. So I'm playing with that same friend, and he's kind of carrying me through and kind of guiding me through a little bit and saying like, yeah, let's do this, let's go this way first, but he's still trying to let me experience it as if it is my first time. And then on the flip side, I'm also trying to use it as prep for the next TTRPG campaign that I'm going to run with my extended family, which will be like a year and a half or more from now. So it's like I'm not stressing about that, but I am playing it thinking like, okay, this boss that we just beat, is this, how would I do this in Draw Steel? How would I make these weapons? What would they do and stuff like that? But it's really fun. So yeah, co-op is fun. Ignore the naysayers. Exactly. I don't know. I'm kind of liking Festerance or something like that. It seems like something that somebody would say in the archive. Like we've been studying the different festerances, or I guess that word kind of sounds weird. Festerance, putrefaction, fermentation, putrescence, spoilage, corruption, dissolution. But this kind of brings up, yeah, it's like breaking something down. This is more like I don't even know. Death Storms versus Abscesses, Festerance, etc. seem very different. If I was Spire Folk, I would call them two different evils, gods, dark ones. Yeah, expand on that a little bit, Joe. Because I get the feeling that we'll move away from death storms as we originally had, where a storm comes through and wipes out an entire village. Just because of the difficulty of navigating across if they have to go from one side to another. Yeah, I think death storms are completely drop death storms as in a thunderstorm of evil. Yeah, I agree. I think we just move away from death storms entirely because death storms were my first attempt at capturing the fantasy of evil corruption spawning in the world without notice, kind of like it's an assault that has really no way to defend against until it's upon you. And so I think we can find better solutions to that fantasy, things that work better. And yeah, Death Storms, High Storms was in the Stormlight archive, and Death Storm does sound really generic. Yeah, Rabbit. It sounds good, but it's super generic. Which has its pros and cons. I think a good amount of generic stuff in a world makes it easier to come into, but also leaves it feeling generic. If we don't have enough unique stuff, we want a good balance of like, I'm new to this and I understand what this means, but also there's some cool unique stuff. Like instead of calling the Ignispecs oracles, they're Ignispecs. Instead of calling the knights just knights or knights of the round table, they are the knights of the Sancti Arc, whatever. So I think we should try to make some things, unique if we can. Storm, Tempest, Rain is too inconsistent with Festering Disease. Yeah, I just don't think we do storms. However, I wouldn't be opposed with these abscesses spawning a fog of sorts, like a thick fog of corruption that also has the same effects that the previous death storms did. So if you walk in it, it will kill your crops over time. It will, like if an abscess opens up in your field, your crops will start dying, and then if it gets to your house, you will start getting sick and dying. And as it spreads across, it's going to be harder and harder to deal with. But I don't think we necessarily have sweeping storms going across the land, wiping things out. I think it's harder to come up with good story points from that point of view. I think it'd be easier if it's like, okay, I'm going to write a story about this village, and they are dealing with an abscess or a fog of death, whatever it is. I think that's easier to, not necessarily just easier. I think it's more productive for the type of project that we're building. Vermis takes inspiration from the same era of dark fantasy as Spire. Yeah, I've used Vermis for a lot of inspiration. I think I have some of them on my a lot of my, especially the game stuff. Just some game vibes. I think this one's from Vermis, Plastaboo. That one. This one might be from Vermis as well. Yeah. Yeah, I love Vermis. I love the vibes, the look, the feel of it, almost feeling like a game. The Ignis Specs book, kind of booklet PDF that I made was very inspired by the layout of Vermis and stuff like that. So definitely a good amount of inspiration from that. So Og over Titans, whatever. Okay. So how do we feel? Is it disease? What is it? All my questions are getting lost. What does OTL mean? I'm trying to remember. I always forget what acronyms mean. It's hard to name things that don't have solid ideas yet. Yeah, a bit confused. Okay. So yeah, I think this is I'll try to communicate what I'm thinking. So let's Okay, is there any questions on what this looks like? This malgrowth, overgrowth, violent overgrowth, whatever we want to call this. Does this section make sense, or is this one kind of confusing? Because if this one's confusing, then I'm not doing a good job at all. If this one's confusing, that makes sense because I'm still working through this part. Imagine that all that comes from the abscesses should have the mal suffix like malgrowth, malforces. That makes sense, yes. Okay. Okay, so at least this actually makes sense. So yeah, this is, we'll just put this into passive changes to the realm. So these are like things that are just happening to the realm that are, oh man, yeah, that aren't necessarily active attacks from the Dark One. This one, I think these are the ways that the Dark One is actively interfering with the realm. So the Dark One actively interfering. That's not how you spell that. It's not interfering, is it? It's not fear. What? How do you spell interfering? Interfering. Oh, interfering? Oh, not two R's. I see. Got it. Interfering with the realm. So, okay. So this is what this page would do. So let's just copy this. And let's put this under here. And we will just do this. And sure, we'll make it a heading. Whereas this page will be, whoops. That's not what I wanted either. Okay. This one is just the active happenings that the Dark One is able to, either the Dark One or his people are able to bring about. And then I think we break this one into 1, 2, or 3 sections. So we'll take this. Whoops, that didn't work. These are still questions we should answer. Whatever. Let's just get this here. Yeah, I'll try to put some, get this into like a easy to digest, put it in the Herald of the Realm or somewhere. So, let's, this is the hard stuff. This is the difficult design that it takes to make sure that you have to be careful and things work and make sure that it's clear and communicatable. So I think that what I'm trying to do here, and this is probably where you guys are getting a little bit confused, is I'm trying to think of a term. I think festerance is a decent one, or corruption in general, that applies to all sorts of things. And so I think one that I've used a lot is bail. Bail refers to unnatural monsters. So this would be zombie, necromancers, lurkers, demons, that sort of thing. So that's I would refer to that as a bail. So when I'm talking in other streams about beast and bail, that refers to both beasts like bears, wolves, dragons, and also bail, which are like these new, leviathans, that sort of thing. Then we could also make a section for abscesses, and this would be spawns bail. Whoops. Bail, disease, fog, I don't know what else, more corruption, influence, magic of some kind, dark magic, whatever. Does that kind of... So do these creatures only belong to the Dark One? Yeah, I think Baal refers to creatures exclusively... I don't know if created is the right word. Created / from the Dark One. Does that... That might have not have been very clear previously. That was my intention, but I probably did not make that very clear. Well, no, it was an Arch Chronicler. I know, we need to redo who's in there and redo some of the roles in the archive, because yeah, that would be really helpful. That the Dark One sweeps through the land, or the XXX sweeps through the land and actually absorbs everything in its path. No take backsies. So a village absorbed with it creates a new Legion of Baal. Oh, that could be interesting. Which, like, if it was a fog of corruption, the only thing that I have a hard time with that is we've talked previously about a fantasy where the knights or groups of zealots or whatever for the kingdom could go in and close up these abscesses and like purify them. And if they can't cross through any amount of this corruption fog without being turned immediately to the Dark One, I think the idea that they could be, and that in the act of trying to purify one, they could lose and then be corrupted would be cool. But I think also the fantasy of being able to win and actually close the abscess and protect a town or a village is also a cool trope. More dominates, chaining them to the abyss so they can be freed. That could also be cool. But maybe it's something that you have to fight off. And those that curses come into play. Oh, so if you do it, you're just cursed. Yeah, I could see it being like a... To me, it feels like a radiation, like a poison gas, where the longer you're in it, the harder it is to resist. And also, you could become corrupted. And like you said, once it's been corrupted, it's impossible to deal with it. Yeah, like the villages are weak, and so the villages could be corrupted with a single breath, But either once the abscess is, there could be a cleansing procedure, or a cleansing procedure that doesn't really cleanse you, or they could be just no takesies backsies, and everyone corrupted is just lost until the final battle, which will never happen or will happen. Who knows? So yeah, I don't know. Portal hell spawns the... Oh, okay, that can be deleted. Does this help at all? Is this a little bit more clear? Potential divine immunity. Yeah, that could be cool. And I like the idea that you could bring things with you to protect you, even if it's like this fog. You don't have to breathe it in to be corrupted. Just being in the fog and having these purity seals like the 40K people, like Space Marines, or an artifact, or a certain type of sword or weapon that brushes it off. So, okay, yes and no. We just need what it looks like. Okay, yeah, I agree. Okay, so yeah, I think this makes more sense. I think these we've talked about. We want Coolers get a highlighter border. Yeah, sorry. Also, this is probably really zoomed out for you guys, isn't it? Can I zoom in? I don't know if I can zoom in well. Well, the font is pretty small. I mean, I can zoom in. I don't really care. Should be able to do it here. Headings and abscesses. So this section, we may do a realm event talking about what the bales look like, but I think your traditional fantasy evil corruption things are considered bale. Anything like we talked about the night creatures from Castlevania, I think that's what I picture when I'm thinking bale. I'm like, oh, they're these like not real animals. They don't necessarily reproduce with each other. They don't have lineages. They don't have etymology. They are just these creations of chaos and evil that just have one desire, which is just consume, destroy, corrupt, spread the disease, whatever. Um, and then, and so if you wanted to create your own type of bale, you could without any permission. You wouldn't need to necessarily do that. I think at a certain point we may get to where we would want leaders of legions of the evil one, and they would have their own sort of way of dealing with things. The consumed. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's getting me excited for the Force of the Dark one. Yeah. Do bales have to be necromancy? Feels a bit too generic. No, not necessarily just necromancy. They could just, that's like what comes to mind. All of these are almost necromancers or zombies, lurkers. Um, but yeah, we talked about like the night creatures. Actually, let's search it on here. Probably going to be better artwork. Stuff like this. Like that's not a real creature. That's not like a real animal. It's a monster of some kind. Um, this sort of thing. They're not real animals. It's not like just a twisted version of a bear. Although they may be. They may be just twisted versions of animals that have been corrupted by some evil sorcerer or something. But these are outside of the animal kingdom. Their life does not come from nature. It comes from evil magic, basically. I think that's kind of the separator of the two. So, monsters created from the Dark One. That's probably about as. Monsters, how I imagine bales. Yeah. Oh, it might be giving me stuff from the game. Yeah. So yeah, these could be anything. I don't think we will necessarily. We may come back to this in a little bit. I think this is the more important thing that we're talking about because this is what would replace a Death Storm. The fantasy that we're going for is some sort of something that can attack villages or can affect villages, corrupt people, and bring about widespread death and decay in the realm. And I think abscesses, if that's the word we land on, is how we do that. What does it do? It spawns bale, bales, or baleful shadows, or whatever you want to call them. It spawns disease, fog of corruption, more corruption, I don't really know, fog, dark magic, etc. What does it look like? How does it appear? How does it grow? So let's get into this. Also plan to remake Storm Wardens? Yeah, because Storm Wardens, unfortunately, is exactly word for word what appears in the Stormlight Archive. Even though I made the term Storm Wardens before I had read Way of Kings, I have now since read 3 of the Stormlight Archive books, and they're not prominent and they do very different things. But I think we need a new word for them just so that it's not confusing. And I think there's probably a more appropriate word now that we don't have storms, if that's the case. So let's write a little bit of fiction really quick. I don't know if it'll be 100% fiction, but let's just write a little bit to see if this makes it more clear. So basically, these would start as a small. Do we want to go with the they're like root nodes and strengthen it? Abscesses cause the malgrowth. This? No. I would say these are, while related to the Dark One, they don't. This is happening everywhere. That's not everywhere. Whereas this is stuff that only happens in close proximity to one of these abscesses. Yeah, clerics made to help fight against them would be really cool. The Dark One is a Gen AI allegory, trust. There are definitely some similarities. I wouldn't call it a one-to-one allegory, but yeah, there are definitely some similarities with the Dark One. Disease is misspelled. DZ. Oh, is it disease? Disease. Thank you. So yeah, this is just happening all over the realm, and I think most people in the realm don't necessarily associate this with the Dark One directly. It's hard to tell that this is some form of evil. It just seems like things are changing. Things are not the way they used to be. Bears are now bigger. Spiders are now more aggressive. Forests are harder to navigate. Our roads are gone. These sorts of things. Our mountain ranges are changing. This is just things that are happening and people don't know what is going on. Their rate is consistently inconsistent. It's unpredictable. Versus this is like visible. This is a place, this is a location where an abscess happens. So, let's see, metaphor. I'm trying to catch up here. Root nodes and strengthen it. Yeah, so do we want to have the abscesses be like boils of like pus and goop? Abscess. This might pull up some weird stuff. Like that's kind of goopy. This is what I was thinking of. Is this how an abscess starts? Is it like a sack of living stuff that once ruptured starts spawning stuff like crazy and the bales start rushing out of it and crawling out and doing whatever? Or something like that. Holy cow. That's nasty. Because I do like the vision. If it was like purplish flesh with like a glowing green underneath, that would be kind of cool. That would give you like that reddish green purple Dark One-esque looking stuff. Let's see. Okay. Or do we do more of a fissure? Like this. I don't know if I have a huge preference, actually. Veins and tendrils ripping a hole into existence. The Dark One spits out evil and dangerous spiders or bears. Now Spirefolk hate all spiders and bears, turning everyone against each other. Yeah, that's fair. because my idea, this image doesn't really capture what I was thinking originally. I don't know if there's a really good image anywhere that captures what I was originally thinking. My idea was like, you'd have a small hole in a tree or in the ground, and roots and tendrils and stuff would crawl out of it, and as it widens, more and more stuff could come out of this essentially portal. But I haven't seen any portal that looks, or fissure or anything that looks quite the way I'm imagining this. Although maybe I'm just thinking of Stranger Things. Stranger Things portal. This is probably the closest thing, isn't it? Sadly. Which has, like we said, we can't avoid everything that's ever been done because there will always be stuff that has always been done. But this is also very evocative in the same way that this is. Proto-fissure? Oh yeah, like when one of them bursts, then it starts to look more like this. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you had to vote, do you feel like this one fits better and serves the fantasy, or this one, or a combination of both? Because I do think you could have this like boiling, bubbling thing, and then when they split, you could have more boils and little bubbles, and they will burst, and these bigger things. I don't know. Okay, Helldiver terminid egg nests. Let's see. That might not do it. Okay. Yeah, see, that's not bad. What makes this different from overgrowth and malgrowth? This, so the difference is that the overgrowth is I think the reason I don't want to call it malgrowth is because there's nothing inherently corrupt or dark magic or cursed about this growth. It is normal, natural growth at an accelerated, violent rate or violent way. I don't know how to best communicate that. So the trees in the realm still grow like trees. They're not growing tendrils necessarily, or pus or corruption. They're still just normal trees. You can still hack them down and use them for wood like you could anywhere else, but they grow at such a rate and in such a way that makes it hard to use them. The trees and plants and stuff will grow over roads and over abandoned homes and over living towns and stuff. And the bears are still just bears. They're not necessarily corrupt bales. They're still just a normal beast. They are just bigger, stronger, angrier, more violent, more prone to attack. So that's why I don't really want to call it malgrowth, because it's not directly corrupt. It is just growth. It's just overgrowth. Versus this spawns a different type of beast. Even if it looks like a bear, it's a very different type of beast. This is actually directly corrupt. It is dark magic, whatever. They're more in the ground, can glow an ominous purple-red color out of the egg nest hole. Is the overgrowth direct product of Dark One or no? Yes and no. Kind of both. The two just seem organic, roots, tendrils. I imagine malgrowth being accelerated growth as a result of the abscess's presence, so it could still be that, and the overgrowth could be a separate thing. Yeah, I could get behind that. I think around an abscess you would see more violent growth / malgrowth. So to answer Lizard Pasta, the overgrowth is a direct... How do I explain this? I'm trying to think of like a good way to explain this. The overgrowth here is only happening because of the Dark One. Only because the Dark One is returning. If we look at the timeline I don't want to pull out the timeline, but there was an age where stuff was normal. It was peaceful. Trees behaved like trees. Roads behaved like roads. Mountains behaved like mountains. Bears behaved like bears. That happened for a period of time, and then once the darkness started coming back, then everywhere in the entire realm, outside of the walls of these select few cities, then that's where this violent overgrowth is happening. It's not like the Dark One is literally doing it. He's not like forcing overgrowth to take over one single city at a time. It's just kind of like a random, like a procedural generation type of thing. It's just happening everywhere. Versus this, which is actively interfering, spawning these abscesses that then maybe affect, sure, you'd see more violent growth and malgrowth around them, more evil beasts or violent beasts that are just normal. But then on top of that, when they pop or when they rupture or whatever, you would then see a ton of these bale, disease, fog, more dark magic and corruption. Does that kind of make sense? How much water does the Dark One waste on his LLMs? Yeah. Yeah, the Dark One is accelerating it. The growth is natural. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the overgrowth is kind of more of a result of his presence back in the realm. Like it's proof that the age of peace and light is probably not here anymore. And then yeah, the abscesses are a direct result of like somebody intentionally put this here, and therefore this thing is happening, if that makes sense. And I think those two are different. I think the reason being this is more of a setting issue. This one covers more what is the realm like? How does the realm behave? This is the only thing that's changing is that this is happening more and more at an accelerated rate. There's not necessarily a start, like this doesn't just happen once and then stop and then happen again and stop. It's always happening. It's just how strong it's happening. Versus this one is less about the setting and more about the story. This is which town is being affected by one of these abscesses, and how is that abscess manifesting what consequences or what's the word I'm looking for? What, not reactions, results. That's not the right word either. What things are happening because of this directly. So this is more story. The other one's more setting, if that makes sense. What if it was a radius from the growth closer to the growth? Wait. What if it was a radius from the growth closer to the growth, you bales as you get further away, just overgrowth? Yeah, you could use malgrowth as a term specifically around the abscesses. I think that's fair. As long as that's not confusing with overgrowth. Because overgrowth is just means at one point our realm was normal, or what we considered normal, and now it's hard to even keep a map because trails don't exist anymore. You have to forge your own trail almost everywhere you go because things are growing more, and bears don't act like bears anymore. It's just happening. This, you could have a directly corrupted bear, like an actual, you could have an overgrown bear. So you have a normal bear, you have an overgrowth bear, whatever, that's still a normal bear, but not corrupted with dark magic. And then you could have next to these abscesses actual beasts, bales, which would be like a completely corrupt, magically infused super bear, which would be its own sort of thing. So yeah, if you want to use malgrowth around an abscess, if that's not confusing to people, I think that's totally fine. I don't see a reason why it would be. I think people would understand based on this. This is the setting. The setting is overgrowth. And this is corruption and more stuff. And so therefore, we're seeing even more of this overgrowth around these certain areas. Even though it's happening everywhere, it's going to happen more here. Is that fair? Had a bunch of typos. What if it's just a radius from the abscess? Closer to the abscess, you get bales, lurkers, and as you get further away, it's just overgrowth. Okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I think that's probably about what it would feel like. Because everywhere you're going to get overgrowth. Anywhere outside of the walls of the Valenholds or the main city, you're going to have overgrowth. In the oceans, in the forests, in the fields, everywhere. And that's just what happens. That's just what is happening as a passive setting feature. And then around the abscesses, you're going to see bales, disease, corruption, potentially worse overgrowth, and that would affect your local area, your village, your town, your home, your farm much more directly than a passive sort of, hey, if we don't remember exactly, we don't have a perfect map of where this went and we don't have a good path, or if we leave this for a few days, we may come back and not be able to find this thing anymore. So, walking abscesses, I don't think there'd be walking abscess. I think the difference is, Moth, that those who are loyal to the Dark One could spawn an abscess if they tried hard enough. If they had the right things or they did the right, like a ritual of some kind, you could birth this abscess. I'm more leaning towards this, by the way. And when it ruptures, it becomes this spawn point of this. I don't think they're necessarily sacks of living like bale or eggs of any kind, but I think they are kind of, in a way, potential. And even as these are starting, they would start as like small, what would almost look like mushrooms or fungi on like a something. Who knows where they would start? And then once it, as it's manifesting, you would start seeing more and more sickness in your town. You might go, oh my gosh, wait, people in our town are getting sick and they're throwing up and they're vomiting all their blood. And then you might send a group out to look around and they might find a group of these and go, oh my gosh, if we puncture this, we could all die. Or if we wipe it out while it's small, we could maybe hopefully not die. Or they might go, oh my gosh, we need a knight here immediately. We need priests to cleanse this thing. And then they go out and then it's this whole thing. And it's can the priests get here and cleanse the town before the whole town is overcome by corruption and death? Or is it too late? Let's see. I'm getting lost in chat. I think stronger difference between the organics overgrowth and abscess malgrowth and the actual effects of the Dark One. Yeah, that's probably true. Malgrowth is stronger, more evil overgrowth. That's a good way to put it. The spectrum is overgrowth leads to malgrowth, leads to the Dark One. Or the Dark One spawns malgrowth, which is an overgrowth. Overgrowth bear equals big violent bear. Malgrowth bear equals big, more violent bear covered in tendrils. Yeah, like tendrils and magic and can breathe fire, purple fire, or whatever. Nature antagonism, overgrowth, unnatural antagonism, the Dark One's effect. I'm not sure if I understand that one. I think it's backwards. Yeah, I mean, it kind of just depends on which way the arrow is pointing. Also said that artifacts could spawn the abscesses. Yes. Not a fan of pustules, like in a very alien way, or in a you don't think it fits the dark fantasy setting kind of way. Could be not. Could be, could not be. Like you think this doesn't fit the vibe of dark fantasy, or it's uncomfortable enough that it makes it scary. Because I mean, this also kind of feels like Stranger Things. But I feel like the other options are more of this sort of thing, where it's kind of more of a portal, which doesn't really fit the term abscess as much. Although we could use the term abscess, it just could get maybe more magical. Both. Yeah, that's really the hardest thing, is like, how do we make it feel unique, but also still like traditional dark fantasy? Because I agree, this isn't really something you would see in like retro dark fantasy stuff. Look through some of my other stuff and see if anything pops out as inspiration. Because I almost pictured it originally more like you'd have a little bit of tendrils like this, not this big. You'd have little tendrils of and sinews, whatever. But then out of it, you'd get this like black smog that would kind of smoke out of it in like a kind of like this, where there's like faces and voices, but it's like a smoke that just emanates out of it. And then as it happens, oh, that's kind of cool. As it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you actually get real creatures coming out of it, not just spirits ghosts and corruption, fog and sickness, whatever. And then eventually you get something like this that would crawl out of it and completely decimate your entire town because it got too big and it got opened and whatever. And so maybe we don't need to find a perfect image as long as we know what we're talking about. And then that's my job, is to draw up what it would actually look like. Approaching dark sci-fi. Yeah, go with the Stranger Things portal, but with more veins on the tendrils as if they're living and breathing. Ooblex in D&D. D&D. Ooblex. Ooblex. Ooblex? Oh. Maybe. I mean, this is more like a goo, right? Like a smoke version of an oobleck is probably the similar. This looks kind of sinuous and slimy. I was kind of more picturing like your typical magical fire smoke sort of thing. Inky black core sealed by writhing vines gripping onto the sack of abyss. Subtle glow emanates from it. Malicious purple. Something instant and uncontrollable is what I imagine. Smoke version of the goo is what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably a safer way to go. Because yeah, this does feel a bit more... I think that's kind of where I was like, a dark fissure. Which I probably doesn't, there's not going to be any good images that will pull up, probably. It'll probably be, yeah, just the normal things. But I like the idea that the Dark One can, or somebody from the Dark One can go in and like split the earth, or like can stick a artifact or a sigil into a stump of a tree or into a tree, and it will like crack the bark, and out of it you'll get this like, psst, like the smoke will come out, and you'll get these little crawly, smoky, tendrily, spider-looking octopus, whatever the creatures look like. They'll start crawling out of it slowly and go in, crawl into people's noses and corrupt them and kill them in their sleep type of thing, or whatever. Spread disease, consume people's crops, and then as it splits, it'll just slowly crack and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you can have full-on monsters pulling out of this thing if it's left for too long. And there would be a way, like, there's no way to cover the entire realm, especially if people are leaving the forests and villages. There could be one in the forest somewhere that's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and nobody's around it until it's humongous. And then you would get literal, like, elephant-sized monsters crawling around, ruining villages one by one, wiping them out, corrupting them, doing whatever, until you get some giant group of knights who have to face it and vanquish the foe and close it all up. That's kind of the idea. Dark fountains. For a guy who doesn't play Deltarune, you're sure love describing dark fountains. Yeah, probably could be. If it came from the heavens instead of underground, that could be cool. I don't see a reason why you couldn't. I don't think there's necessarily one way to open a fissure or an abscess or whatever you want to call it. I think you could theoretically open one in the sky. Like if they had a dark tower and you like pierce the sky and out of it you get this stuff. I think that would probably be a more formal way to pull one open versus like because I think they should be able to be opened by themselves and with no interference. They could just happen, but they'll be weaker. I think the more intentional it becomes, the stronger they start by default. So if some cultist of the Dark One goes out in the forest and has a correct artifact or does a certain ritual, they could open one capable of pulling human-sized enemies out of it immediately instead of having to let it fester for a week or a month or whatever to grow to that size or power. It's not really about climbing through the womb, essentially. It's more about just how much power it can pull out of it. So I think so. The Dark One, not apocalyptic in nature. Kind of. He kind of is. Oh, like they fall from the sky and crack open the earth. That's what you're saying. That could be interesting. Yeah, I'd imagine the Lost is like the ultimate abscess. It's like the biggest one. Like otherwise the monsters have to crawl over the Titans or come out of small abscesses. The Lost is like their best way of getting people in. Like it's cracks all over the ground, inside, on the top of the tower, and it's just spawning day and night, just pulling, dark bale from the lands of exile, creating nightmares beyond comprehension, that sort of thing. Okay, well, there's no good, there is not a single good piece of art that accurately represents what I'm trying to talk about. But I think we're closer to a fissure than we are an abscess. Is that a bad thing to say? Oh, did I misspell that? What? The word isn't in the thesaurus, but here's the definition. Okay. Well, that's a bummer. How is it not in the thesaurus? How do you not have abscess in this thesaurus? I mean, I guess this is more of a scientific medical term, maybe. Yeah, the loss would also 100% char be like just dissipating huge plumes of purplish red smoke, like a giant dry ice fountain where it's like just spilling out both into the sky and over and sweeping out across the bottom. Yeah, but an abscess sounds cool. Yeah, that's true. Let's go. Let's do. Oh, thesaurus. Let's try fissure. Rift. Rift is so overused in fantasy, though. It's always the rift. Like there's like Apex, League of Legends. My brother has his own book series that he's been writing that has a rift in it. Incision, that seems too scientific. A breach. A gash. Miasma. Miasma. I've never heard that word. Or I think I have, but I don't remember what it means. Yeah, just because you aren't making it meaty doesn't mean it can't be an abscess. That's true. I just feel like abscess. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing. I just feel like abscess is a collection. Like it implies that it can be that it will be broken in some future point. And I think more people would start thinking about the pustules if they were to hear the word abscess than they would think of a crack or an incision or some sort of rupture. Fracture? Malfracture? Malrupture? Abscess sounds like the root of an infection. Could be. Recurring abscesses and slow healing lesions often come and go in circles. Abscess can be drained. That's like the hard thing. Names for origin of disease. I can't spell disease. Holy cow. This is all too scientific. That's the hard part. So much of bad things have been sciencified, which is great, but hard when you're trying to write fantasy. Let's see. Let's see. Split, tear, rip. Abscess does kind of make me feel like it will burst at some point. Yeah. Maybe it has stages like cancer. Fun girl story. I actually had a huge abscess, went to the ER for it. Dang. Had to cut it open with a scalpel. That sucks. Bringing back memories. Yeah. Dang. See, that's like the opposite. It's like it's more like I picture it more like a portal. I mean, not like a two-way portal. Like you can't go into it and end up in the lands of exile. But it's like a spawn point more than it is an abscess. Fracture and rupture sound decent. Sudden tearing or breaking of something. That sounds like a rupture. Let's do Um, etymology of rupture. Ruptura. Up here. Rupture wart. Rupture. Corrupt. Oh, corrupt. Rupture. Oh, interesting. Rump is to break. Rup is to break. Erupt, bankrupt, rudder, route. Isn't that different? Disorderly retreat. Yeah, that's more different. Interrupt. Eruption. Interesting. Permeable. Breach. Schism. I don't know. I like rupture. I like breach. I like schism. Those are probably the ones I would choose. Although we could go with like laceration, something more. We could laceration is a big enough word that we could probably twist it and make something really cool out of it. Burst, eruption, rift, scratch, sinkhole, blast, score. A score is also cool. Score could be a really cool term. A mark as if with a line or a groove. Because I feel like the action of the if it's as if the dark one is scoring the earth or scoring a tree, and out of it comes this thing. Score, laceration, incision, breach, rupture. Fissure is the right amount of sly and slow breakage. Yeah, because they do grow slowly. So maybe fissure. And maybe we just create a new name. Maybe we create a new name here, and in the description it's a fissure of dark magic and a spawn point of corruption. We could just come up with a straight up brand new name here. And that will probably get us further than we're trying to get with just the English language. Suture is, yeah, I think the healing part. Yeah, horror borrows stuff from pregnancy and stuff, yeah. Lobbying for allowing the community to post a Dark One shot. I want to see everyone's creativity. That would be sick. Okay, so round A, fissure. We'll call it fissure for now. I think that's just the closest thing. What do we call this one? I had a different term for it, didn't I? Oh, festerance in general. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. No idea. Okay. You'd see volume outgrowth. These start as small splits in objects or the earth. Emanating. Is that not how you spell emanating? Emanating black. Black smoke. Dark magic. And some small dark creatures. If left alone, or if catalyzed by ritual or other means, it will grow allowing for more vicious, large creatures, magic, and corruption to spew forth. Okay. Is that too vague for how it looks? Do we need to go over more, like what does the corruption look like? Because part of me leans, I see both sides of it. Part of me leans towards we make a very established, hey, everybody's going to be throwing up blood and their skin will turn black and like crusted and like it'll look like dead flesh, like this greenish, blackish, gray. That's corruption. Or we say, you get, as a writer, you get to do how you get to write how you want. You get to be creative and you get to come up with some very creative way to have these people die to corruption. Object of the earth with rich tendrils Yeah, not really sure. I think I'd rather leave it mostly up to people. I think we'll end up at, I think there will be some natural streams. Yeah, we will have to explain it anyway, so we should invent a word anyways. I think I agree. I think we just come up with a new name for this sort of thing, these fissures. Because the word fissure is cool and works, but it's not as cool as a name we could probably come up with. How does it appear? Okay, so yeah. How does it grow? Okay. So these can appear by themselves as small scores. In small cases, or they can be summoned, created. The help of an acolyte or other source dark magic, like artifact or other item. Effects of the corruption of humans being the symptoms of hyperkalemia. What the heck is hyperkalemia? High blood potassium levels, typically exceeding. Is that so they burn purple? Is that what the hyperkalemia is for? Extra potassium. How does it appear? Got that one. And how does it grow? Ritual or other dark magic. Let's see, ritual, offerings, or other dark magic practices can accelerate the speed that these grow. I think that's pretty. Something up with my mic. Uh-oh. Is it glitching? Let me listen to myself really quick. I don't know. Is it still going or does it sound better now? Humming when I talked. Oh, that's dumb. Maybe it was the angle that my head was at. Might also need to just adjust the EQ at some point. I don't know really how in OBS, but we could figure it out. Okay, yeah, it's probably just mumbling as well. Um, so really, this is more going to be about. I think what I'm thinking. Oh wait, cancel. Whoops. Save. So. Let's go to. Where's this? Oh wait. Save. Press. Okay. Let's do compendium of knowledge, manifestations. Okay, so we have a section for Baal already. Baleful creatures, I think, are in a way a manifestation. As far as the organization of this, is this confusing? Or I think should Baal just be a part of manifestations? I think it probably should be. Let me go. Chapters. Edit manifestations. There we go. That should do it. So manifestations, we have this new name type of fissure, we have violent overgrowth, and we have Baal. Why is it ordered like that? I'm surprised violent overgrowth isn't at the bottom. I thought these were all. Let me double check. Manifestations. Forces of darkness. Okay. Valen holds, Baal. Wait. Am I dumb? Ugh. Violent overgrowth. Oh, because it's its own page. And Baal is a section within. So you'd have manifestations, Baal. Okay, I think I see what's going on here. Okay. Sorry, that was a little bit confusing. Basically, manifestations is the main page. There's 2 pages, or it's the main category. There are 2 pages under manifestation and one other subcategory. And within the subcategory of Baal, there are Baal or barrow lurkers or whatever other creatures we end up putting in this section. Okay. Not bad. Questions? Is this make a lot more sense now? I think. We just need to come up with a good name for this, basically. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of names. Festerance, I think, is a word that I could use just in some fantasy writing. I don't think it necessarily needs to be the title of it. Dark One community event when? I know, seriously. So I'm totally in the mood to write an Army of the Dark One. I know, we kind of got all inspired on this. I'm sure we'll do a stream going over races and peoples and stuff to get you guys hyped for that one, if that's what wins. I intend the vote is open for a week. So, and we're pretty close between evil forces and monsters and peoples and races. Those seem to be the ones that are leading. And I'm planning on posting some more TikToks this week. So we may get some more people in here who are like, oh, I really want to write about this. I actually have a TikTok script being written about choosing what the next event will be to get you guys thinking about it, and also other people who haven't heard the project thinking about it, and so they can do that. Yeah, the Dark One mini event. Is this like the everyone describe a run-in with the Dark One and give it a name? 100 words, including a title describing the Dark One, due at the end of the week. I mean, sure. Why not? I don't see a reason why you couldn't. Do we try to come up with this name right here, right now? or should we just leave it? Old English terms for evil. Brainstorm mini event. Evil, fool, Belu, amended, skilled. Nitheful. Repudious. Rejection worthy, vile and villainous. That's kind of cool. No, no. Mislived. Make it homework. Yeah, we'll try to come up with a new name for this. I mean, this isn't even accessible stuff. Let me clean this up a little bit. So, new name for Death Storm. So we have, so not Death Storms, but Fissures of Evil. That'll be the placeholder name. The Dark One actively forcing his power into the realm. That can be a heading one. Amazing stream, thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's definitely more slow and more chill than some of the other streams, but I enjoy it just the same. And it's good to be able to bounce ideas back and forth and end up at a good place. I say so much on stream. Nice and relaxed, yeah. Hopefully we can do more like this. I want to do some art ones. I really want to I want to do like profile pic for my Spire Home account, because currently it's just the old logo, which is kind of boring. I want to do some like old school animation style, like Silphus, one of the Ignis specs, or something cool like this style, and just make that as like my profile pic or something easy, not something super complex, but something fun and dark fantasy-esque, you know. I think that'd be really fun. So maybe I'll do that on stream. I also need to finish some other artwork I've started and haven't picked back up because I've been so busy with other stuff, but this is AI. That's what I thought. Of course it is. But cool stuff either way. Where was I going with this? Right. Here. Okay. Bale, natural monsters created from the Dark One. Let's get rid of that. And let's do save on overgrowth. Mob and striking paralurkers. Am I dumb? Oh, here it is. Bale, edit. Update. And then new name here for these fissures. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see how this works. Okay. And this will obviously get, this will get way better looking, like, yeah, like my TikTok art stream. Yeah, maybe I'd do something on there again. That was kind of fun. We got lots of random people jumping in and out like every second, but it is what it is. Yeah, this will need some headers, like how do they start? What are these rituals like? And maybe that'll be a realm event in and of itself, or just like a creative writing prompt that you guys can pick up on. But I think having a rough set of rules, kind of like we have with Magic, just enough to for people to have connected ideas, but also just enough that you can get creative and break the rules a little bit and try new things and see where it goes. Okay. Measures of evil, violent overgrowth. I don't even know if this really has much to do with it. I think this can just be its own thing. Sorry, I'm jumping through pages like crazy right now. I don't think this is necessarily a sign of overgrowth. I think that's just, it just happens and people just know it happens. It'll be mentioned somewhere. Okay. Jump out here. Okay. Well, we got through at least that, which is pretty good. We at least got through the Fissures of Evil, which we will come up with a new name for. And I don't know if we go with more of a colloquial term that is more reminiscent of what the people would call them, and if they all call it the same thing. That's rarely how things happen, but if it's common enough that people know what it is, or if we go with more of a scientific name that the archive or the kingdom itself would come up with for them, and that's what we refer to them as, or if that's what everybody refers to them as. And they say, hey, if you've got one of these going on in your village, it's probably one of these things. Although it seems like the kind of thing they wouldn't want your village knowing about, so they may not even tell you what the official name is. People may have their own colloquial name for these sort of things that they find in the forest and out around their villages. Okay. How are we feeling? Should we end stream there? We've been going for like what? 3 hours? I don't know. Do we end stream there? Should we keep going, do like 1 or 2 more things? Is there anything else that's really pressing? I mean, I'm down to do this again this week sometime and just keep going through stuff. Consumption. That could be cool. My cousin died of consumption suddenly has new meaning. Yeah, if we're going allegorical, that could definitely be it. The Guan is what I'm with. Oh, the Guan. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I want to stay away from stuff like Void and Rift. Those just get used so much. Even though Void is a pretty good term for stuff like that, and Rift alike. Oh, like Gaunt without the T. Gone. Interesting. Okay. Well, I think we might end there then. That's a pretty good, I mean, that's a good amount of stuff we've done. Consumption is not a joke, Jim, okay? Millions of families suffer every year. Do I have the AI filter on? Oh, yeah, on Pinterest, yeah, I have it the preferences set to don't show me anything AI, but that tends to only work on the actual homepage. And even that seems to suck at it. Like most of the stuff on the actual homepage won't be AI, and then you'll click on something, and then all the extra stuff around here will be AI. I don't know, it's kind of difficult. It doesn't, Pinterest, I have so many gripes with Pinterest. It's fallen off so hard, sadly. Like this is definitely AI. I can just tell all of these are AI. It can't tell. It only can tell when somebody deliberately marks it as AI generated content, which happens often, but not every time, not most of the time probably. Anyways, yeah, I hate Pinterest. It's so sad what it's become. Iguan, like short for iguana. Yeah, that'd be something. Okay, well, I think we call it there. I mean, I'll be in the Discord today and hanging around and doing stuff, so shouldn't be too far for those of you who need questions answered and whatnot. But yeah, have a good one. I'll see y'all soon, probably sometime this week. I don't know exactly when the next Valenhold, or not the next Valenhold, the next Realm event will happen. I'll be gone all next week camping, so that will take up a bit of time. But depending on the direction things move and stuff, who knows? But for now, we'll just keep chugging away at some of this stuff. Hopefully, at some point, this gets good enough that we can launch the website, because that'd be awesome for you guys to be able to access this for the next Realm event. If we have like the Valen holds in here officially, I can try to get some more stuff, as much as we do have on the Sanctiarchs, on churches, gods, beasts, whatever. So, cool. I'll see y'all later. Oh, yeah. I think I fixed the sound, by the way. I don't think it should make that crazy sound anymore. It should just play the audio, but it may be loud, so turn down your volume a little bit. See ya.